NFL football fans, come one, come all, come to the greatest football podcast out there, the only NFL speaking podcast that thinks that, well, someone on the show thinks that Tanner McKee will be drafted in the first round of the
Oh,
2023
yeah, there you
NFL
said
draft. And then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Coming off of last week's episode, ladies and gentlemen, for any of you that watched, that continuously watch, or if you're actually finding the podcast for the first time, first off, welcome. You'll understand the chaos part as the episode goes on. Trust me on that, and in future episodes for the time being. But yes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is we're very close to arguably the most exciting time of the year. Yes, NFL free agency is fun. Yes, trades are great, but the NFL draft is the time. I've always called the NFL draft, and I think drafts in most sports, to be honest, except baseball, because that happens during the season, as the official reset button for fan bases where hope reinvigorates, teams get excited, new players coming on, the potential is sky high, and who knows, next season could be just glory, which isn't the case for a majority of teams, considering only 14 make the playoffs. So for a little over half of you guys, you ain't doing anything next year. But for the rest, there's at least some odds. But in all seriousness, guys, welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. This episode, our NFL pre-draft news episode, where we're kind of, off of last week's three-round mock draft. We're kind of just going through the last bit of notable news or rumors that are happening before the draft here, and talking about an interesting thing here because, while we have the 2023 draft starting next week, we have to take a little bit back to look back at a previous draft class and some intriguing news that is going to be certain to break over the coming weeks when it comes to some of these guys. But of course, I cannot do this by myself here. I am usually joined by my several compatriots of chaos, but in this case, I just have one cohort of chaos joining me live. I should probably point this way because he's that way on my screen. Justin, how are we doing this week?
I'm doing good. I can't wait for the draft to come up. I'm starting to get the jitters.
Indeed. Yeah. And the big thing for us, we did this a little bit last year. We're going to see it this year. How many of our picks hit? How many of the guys that we said should go to certain teams, how many of them will go there? How many of them are still going to fall somewhere in the draft, but still go to a pretty useful team? I think I can guarantee this. Tanner McKee's probably not going to the Kansas City Chiefs, at least not in the first round.
Not unless it's like in the 6th or 7th round.
I was going to be nice. I was going to say 3rd or 4th, but you know what?
I don't see the Chiefs picking a quarterback that early.
Well, no, I wasn't talking about the Chiefs. I was just saying in general, just the team.
No, he could go in the 3rd or 4th round. I'm not saying that he doesn't have that kind of talent or people don't think that he's got that kind of skill. If he's going to the Chiefs, it's not going to be till late, and it's because he fell.
Yeah, fell. But we're not here to talk about Tanner McKee. This is probably the most that we ever expected to talk about Tanner McKee. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If you need the reference, please check back at the 31st overall pick from last week's 3-round mock. Fantastic, to say the very least, by a man who is not joining us live this week, but of course will be joining us in some way, shape, or form, as he always does. The Podfather, Rick, is not here. But even despite the fact that Rick is not here, I always say this. When Rick is out for the day, the boys like to come and play. Now, to be fair, we do these segments when he's here anyway, but we always have a little like having fun on this show. It's fun, football, and chaos is the tagline for this podcast. And let's start with the fun, as we always do. We got some trivia from our main man, our keeper of games here, our game master, Justin. Justin, what do you got this week, which I'll probably totally screw up on when it comes to trivia?
No, Jurg, I think you got this one. The question is, who is the active leader in interceptions in the NFL? So talk it out. You could talk to me like you talked to Rick about it.
Okay, so it has to be someone that's currently on a roster.
Yes.
So
that's currently on a roster, and is scheduled to play this year.
Definitely. So
something crazy.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to think of like guys who have been around the league for a good little while. It's got to be someone with a little bit of tenure. It's a combination of someone who's had success and someone who has tenure in this league.
Well, if you remember, Brett Favre was once considered one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. I think still has the all-time interceptions mark.
Right.
I mean, it's even the best players are not immune to mistakes.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, maybe I was confusing this question. Are you talking about quarterback with the most career interceptions, or are you talking about defensive back with the most?
No, quarterback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Who?
I was thinking of quarterbacks with the most.
That could be a good one for next week, but this week,
okay, quarterbacks. Gotcha.
Yeah, right, quarterback was thrown the most interceptions. That's my fault. I was not clear.
Bet. All right, no, you're good. You're good. All right. Okay, this requires a lot of illuminating here. The answer might shock me just considering how much. Okay, so he's not there anymore. He's in limbo. Very accurate, but he's played the longest of the projected starters. Well, okay. So there's two guys that come immediately to mind. So just gonna stow them away as I go division by division here with the
Mhm.
lists.
Who do you have? Who came to mind?
Matthew Stafford and
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers. And I know Rodgers is super efficient when it comes to throwing the football. I know he doesn't have a lot of interceptions, but consider some of the competition that he has around him.
The league has recently gotten a lot younger.
Exactly. So that's why a guy, Aaron Rodgers, 5, 6, 7 years ago, he would not be anywhere near the top 5 of this list because of who was still around. But because so many guys have retired, a lot of his contemporaries, you start to think about him a little bit more upper in this list. So I'm just putting it in my brain. So I think aside from, because I'm going division by division in my head, I could eliminate the NFC West aside from obviously me keeping Stafford there because no one in San Fran has that many throws. Gino's great. He hasn't thrown that many interceptions. It's a future Ring of Honor guy right there. And Arizona, Kyler Murray hasn't been in the league long enough to throw that many interceptions. And his backups also have not been in the league that long. So NFC West out the way. NFC South, it's Derek Carr. So we can slightly consider Derek Carr. He's been around for a little bit now. And he's not hyper efficient. He's not terrible. I can't think of a season where he's thrown more than 20. Maybe his rookie year. Maybe that season, but so Derek Carr, we can add him to the list of guys we could consider. But then Panthers, they're about to get a rookie quarterback, so it doesn't matter. Yes, Andy Dalton's been around for a while, but I just don't consider him. I consider Dalton such a safe quarterback. It would shock me if he was maybe not top 5 because again the league is young, but it would shock me if he was that high. So not him. Atlanta, it's Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke now, so it's definitely not either of them. And who's the last team in the NFC South that I'm completely blanking on? Oh, the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. Nah. Despite the fact what most Browns fans might think about Baker, he has a lot in a season. He doesn't have, the total career yet to throw that many interceptions. NFC North, I have Rodgers for now. Kirk Cousins is definitely in consideration, but again, he's a guy that I think is relatively safe with the football. And the first couple of years he was technically in the league, he was more backup in Washington to RG3. So he kind of had a little bit later start in his tenure in terms of starting as many games. So Kirk Cousins could be in consideration, but he's not the first guy that comes to mind. And obviously then Justin Fields, we eliminate that. And Detroit, Jared Goff, been around a little bit, but I don't think he's thrown that many. So we're almost completely eliminating the NFC. And then there's the NFC East. Daniel Jones, despite all the interceptions, I don't think so. I think there are some veterans that have thrown a little bit more, although it wouldn't surprise me if he's at least top 10. Rest of the NFC East, Jacoby Brissett, no. Dak Prescott, not really. Dak throws some interceptions here and there. He had a really bad interception season this season. Bad interception count this season, but I don't think he'd be up there for number 1. And who's the last guy in the NFC East that I have to consider right now? Hold on, what team am I forgetting? Oh, Jalen Hurts, obviously. Duh. Main point. One of the main talking points of this episode. Obviously, no, he hasn't thrown that many. So we've taken care of the NFC, and we have what 4 candidates from there. And then I think of the AFC. I think you could eliminate, but basically the entirety of the AFC East. Josh Allen would be the only one you would consider, and he's gotten way better at interceptions since then. The AFC
hasn't been in the league that long.
That too. He's the most veteran quarterback in that division, arguably, in terms of who's actually going to start a lot, which is kind of crazy to think. So you eliminate that. AFC South, again, similar situation. Tannehill's been there a bit, probably top 10 in this count, so you could slightly consider him. But the rest of that division quarterback room is just so young, and Matt Ryan's not active anymore. And at AFC West, Herbert, too young. Mr. Unlimited, you got to slightly consider him, although he was relatively efficient in his Seattle days. I'll give him that. And then the other quarterbacks there, you have Jimmy G, again, relatively safe with the interception total, and hasn't been a starter that long when you actually consider it. He's been in the league for a while, but he hasn't been starting as long as people think. And he's had 2 seasons end due to injury prematurely. So that also saves on the interception count. AFC North. No, I think AFC North, I could eliminate that. And then what's the last division that I haven't? No, I think I've named all the divisions. Okay. First guess, Matthew Stafford.
That's it. Matthew Stafford, 169. By the way, you were wrong. Andy Dalton is second with 144.
Really?
And your favorite guy, Ryan Tannehill, will be third
Of course.
at 188. The only other 2 people with over 100 interceptions, Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers.
Of course. There we go. Hey, Matt. So wait, where's Derek Carr on that list? How many is he?
Derek Carr is the next highest one at 99, and Russell Wilson is 98.
Wow. Well, I can promise you those two are going to join the 100 interception club this season.
Probably.
For sure. Unless they get injured week 1, which
I
obviously we
was
don't
gonna
want
say,
that.
yeah, it's almost impossible to not throw an
Yeah.
interception if you start all 17 games.
Exactly. Especially those two. All right. So my shot's taken.
Great job.
Regardless. Hey, thank you. I continue the tradition of we named everybody on the list, even aside from the definitive answer. So wow. But honestly, it makes sense. And Justin, when you bring that's a very great question because I think that's going to be a question that we have to revisit in a few years from now because
Of course, that's a number that's always going to change.
For sure. But especially think about like a majority of the teams that I eliminated because their quarterback is still so young, but B, how efficient a lot of these guys are. Like, this is going to be a very interesting conversation when a lot of the guys, like, basically that whole top 6, top 7 is gone 5-6 years from now. Like, this will be an interesting number to see because how many of these elite quarterbacks may not even have 100 interceptions under their name in another 5 years? You never know. These guys are born now to be more efficient when it comes to throwing the football, even deadlier with their passing. This is going to be a fun one. That was an amazing question.
Thank you. Well, I will say to your credit, that's true, but I don't know if the volume of interceptions will change because the volume of passes is going to go dramatically up as we continue with this kind of trend. And unless there's some sort of rule change coming up in the future, they might be more efficient, but they're also going to have a way higher volume of passes. So I think that interception number might stay the same on average.
Justin, did you forget the new rule that'll come out in the future? You're no longer allowed to intercept the quarterback. Can't do anything.
Yeah, soon.
Soon, trust me.
Soon.
It'll be illegal. It'll be a pass interference now when you get an interception. So
any defensive player that touches the ball will be ejected.
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully they at least stay to the football and they don't try to curb stomp somebody's chest into the pavement that some other sports do. Anyways, moving on from trivia. Woo. That was absolutely amazing, Justin. What do we got next? We got a would you rather, we got fact or fiction. What do we got?
I got one of each. Which one would you prefer?
Let's start with the would you rather.
All right, this one is just for you, Jerg. All right, who would you rather see win a championship this year? The Tennessee Titans or Russell Wilson?
You doing me dirty here. You're doing me dirty. Okay, I need to consider things.
Now, just so you know, we do have a time limit today. You cannot stall forever.
I know. Oh, God, that's tough. Russell Wilson.
All right, what if I threw in Trent Baalke there? You have a.
No, see, that's not fair because I actually like Trevor Lawrence, but you're saying that's well. Okay,
that's why I left him out. See, I thought about putting in Trent Baalke there. I thought about putting Minnesota, but I was like, there's really he'll take that over Russell Wilson or Tennessee
any day.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Yes, Trent Baalke wins the Super Bowl, but I don't have to give him credit because he's not the guy that picked Trevor Lawrence. That was the most set on like anyone would have picked him. So I'm not giving him credit.
The guy that picked Trevor Lawrence.
Anyone would have picked Trevor Lawrence. I don't care. I don't give
everyone
Baalke
else
credit.
on that team.
I don't give Baalke credit. All right. Also, yeah, no, I would have gone with the Jaguars. A for Trevor Lawrence and B for our boy Christian Kirk. So
yeah,
if I have to go with those two demons that you've given me, I'll pick Russ begrudgingly because the thing with the Broncos is that I can stomach Russell Wilson winning the Super Bowl because my vitriol that I show, it's not because of somebody else. The annoyance that I have for the Tennessee Titans is because of another individual directly. The Broncos
we're getting some backstory.
Not. Yeah. I don't know if you want the full backstory here. Rick's not here, so I don't think it's proper to tell it. We could save that again for.
I want it so bad, but all right, we can wait for it.
I will say this: my annoyance of the Titans is because of another individual. Russell Wilson is not. So if I had to pick it, it's because I can stomach Russell Wilson winning a Super Bowl.
You can't stomach hearing it from this other person when the Tennessee
absolutely. Even though this person, they don't really appear on my social media, but I will somehow, some way hear of this person and they're bragging with the Titans. And I cannot allow it. And also shout out to my guy who you've also been on a couple mocks now at this point with Justin Stu. Stu's my guy. He's a Colts fan. I'm with him. I don't want to see the Tennessee Titans win a goddamn Super Bowl anytime soon. So I can't let that happen. So So wow, Jesus Christ, you made me pick between my two demons, Justin. It's like, how would you rather die? Would you rather be shot in the head or stabbed 15 times? Jesus Christ, man.
Oof, shot in the head quicker. All right. You ready for the next one?
These are both painful deaths.
Yeah.
No, my skull catches the bullet on that one, Justin. Anyways, like Lincoln. All right, let's go with the fact or fiction.
God. All right, back to serious notes here.
Yes.
Fact or fiction, Jared Goff will be on the Detroit Lions next season, not this coming one, the following one.
So you're saying Jared Goff will be a Detroit Lion for the 2024 season? Fact
Yes.
or fiction? Ooh, okay. Okay. So because check back on our mock last week, ladies and gentlemen. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we had the Lions picking a quarterback in one of the first two with one of their firsts.
I don't believe so. We should have posted like a screenshot of our first.
That would have been smart,
at the very least. Did I have the Lions?
Well, actually, hold on. To be fair, I can actually figure this out. I don't know why I'm pretending like I don't have the magical callback here with me. So last week for the Lions, actually no, you did have the Lions go quarterback. You had them go Will Levis 6 overall.
Oh yeah, because he fell.
Yeah, you had them take Levis with the 6 overall pick.
Yeah. It is. I think that all right because he's a good project quarterback. So it would depend on how ready he is, assuming that's what happened. But
exactly.
There's a reason I asked it this week. Is because this week we don't know if they picked a quarterback.
Exactly. So
do you think they'll pick a quarterback? Do you think they'll pick a long-term project quarterback? And if so, how long is Jared Goff staying there? Will he be on the team in the subsequent season?
I think Goff will be a Lion in 2024 because I think if you're Detroit, I think the Lions have accepted the fact. I think most teams have accepted the fact they're not getting one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. I think we know one of either Stroud or Bryce Young are going to go to the Panthers, which we thought it's been Stroud for a good bit. Now reports are saying they're heavily favoring Bryce Young at the moment. Who knows? It's smokescreen season, but at the end of the day, we know it's going to be one of those two for sure.
Smokescreen season has been interesting because all of a sudden we're seeing like the character assassination of CJ Stroud,
which is wild.
And now all of a sudden, once again, even though people have been tearing down Will Levis, now all of a sudden Will Levis is like the apple of the eye of a couple of teams, especially the Colts. Apparently,
this is the definition of prospect fatigue.
So much smoke.
This is part of it with Stroud. I think is also prospect fatigue. I think people are sick of having him up there, and people are just making up excuses at this point to not have him as highly rated as we've had him for the last 2 years. So I think Goff will be a Lion in 2024 because even whether they pick a quarterback this year or whether they pick a quarterback next year, I think the Lions have accepted the fact that they're going to end up with a quarterback that has to sit out a year, at minimum a year. Whether this year they come away with Will Levis, whether they come away with Hendon Hooker, whether they come away with Anthony Richardson, let's say, or which, by the way, people have tried to start Anthony Richardson to the Panthers rumors, which, oh God, what that pick would completely throw off the whole draft.
That would change the entirety of the draft.
Yeah, the amount of teams, because also there's smokescreen that the Texans may not want a quarterback. You're talking about the amount of chaos. I mean, the show loves chaos. The amount of chaos that would happen at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th overall picks if somehow it's not Bryce Young or CJ Stroud going 1, it would be absurd. But let's assume that order happens and the top 2 quarterbacks are gone by the time the Lions are going. It's a real shot that they could go with a QB at 6. And whether they would pick one of the main 2 guys I said, or if they wait in the draft and they go for a Hendon Hooker, or they go for a Tanner McKee, they have to wait. They have to let that guy marinate. They have to let that guy develop with the offense. And I think definitively, even if they go quarterback in this draft, I don't think that quarterback is playing in 2023, unless Jared Goff gets hurt. And so then the question becomes 2024, will the guy be ready? And I know it's part of it. Well, why not just put the guy on? I think even though they kind of didn't do it on purpose, Jordan Love sat. I mean, I know he sat the first 3 years, but what's the harm in letting guys? What's the harm in letting a guy sit even one more year?
The idea is that if you want to win games, you want to do it as quickly as possible. One, because if you are a coach that ends up on the hot seat, who cares if this kid sits a year? That doesn't help you. You're not going to coach him the next year. Two, things financially are a lot easier when your quarterback is on a rookie deal. Is. So that is an extremely tight window. And if you're going to use a first-round pick, in theory, you want that person to start day one. That's the kind of player you're looking for in round one. I know quarterbacks change the game. Otherwise, we'd almost never see a quarterback in the first round because there's always some sort of projection. But if you are not starting a rookie that you took in the first round,
it's seen as a waste.
It's got a negative connotation. Whether or not he plays all 17 games and is a regular contributor, you want impact players in the first round. You're looking for blue chip, especially early in the first round. So that's the issue. Now, I'm not against guys sitting for a year. I think it would have been beneficial for, a lot of the guys that we've seen in the last few years, including 2 Jets quarterbacks that are maybe no longer going to be on the team after next year. The first one is already gone. But yeah, look, I can't blame guys for wanting to pick someone that's going to head in right away. And I will say, that being said, the reason I find this question so interesting is if the Lions do take a step forward this year and their defense is a lot stronger and they are in even more close games as they seem to be in every year, and they start winning some of them, the spotlight will now be on Jared Goff, because that will be the next position that they'll have to take a look at.
Yep.
So if Goff is playing well and then has up and down games, immediately you'll start to hear the comparisons. Well, is Jared Goff the guy? Is he Kirk Cousins, where he can have a couple of good games and doesn't come through in the clutch? Or is he someone that can take a team back to the Super Bowl? And it'll be interesting. There's a very short list of quarterbacks that have started a Super Bowl for 2 teams.
Very, very true. Very true. Mm-hmm. And usually it's in the pantheon of greats where those quarterbacks reside.
Absolutely. So, in fact, I can only name
Kurt Warner and Brady.
3.
You were thinking Peyton?
Yeah.
So Warner, Brady, Manning. That's it, no?
Yeah. Only 2 of them won a Super Bowl for another team.
Exactly.
With both teams. So
yeah. So at the end of the day, Goff still a line in 2024. I'll say yes for now, because again, we have to go based off of, we have no idea what's happened so far. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to this episode in 3 months from now, please do remember this was before the draft. But I will say for now, yes, because, and again, I know I'm with you, Justin. I have been pounding the table ever since we started the podcast about value and, winning with a rookie quarterback on a cheap deal. But I'm still not convinced Anthony Richardson or Will Levis will be ready definitively by 2024. And that's part of what we talked about last week with the mock, where if you're not sold on the quarterback, do you pick him? And again, I also think this is the tricky part, because how good is Detroit going to be this season will affect their draft pick next year, will affect their standing when it comes to a quarterback in next year's class. Because we know
had the Lions pick last year and this year. I mean, the Lions, they had the Rams pick last year and this year.
And yeah, I think like they're not having multiple first round picks next year.
Well, we'll see, because if the draft does shape up and the Titans don't pick who you think they're going to pick, or who I think they're going to pick, and they do pick who you think you're going to pick,
right?
There's going to be a lot of movement. And
absolutely.
If one of these quarterbacks falls to 5, where the Lions are, all of a sudden they got a really valuable pick, and they still have a first round pick. They could easily move back, trade it for a first in 2 seconds, a first round pick next year in 2 seconds, or a later pick, or whatever they can find in value. And all of a sudden they have 2 first round picks again next year. So
very much a possibility. Like, because at the end of the day, we know who the top 2 quarterbacks in next year's draft class are. It's Caleb Williams and it's Drake.
That's what we said last year, though. Well, I guess it's those Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but we thought that there were going to be other guys in this conversation. We didn't have Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. We had who's the
Spencer
kid?
Rattler.
Spencer Rattler, and there was another kid that was everyone was expecting to come out and didn't.
Bo Nix.
Could be.
So, but no, I think the thing is those 2 definitively next year's draft class is theirs. Next year, they're the headline guys, and
Mhm.
literally, it's funny because I've already done early work on just to see where people are ranking the rest of the quarterbacks. Man, when I tell you, I have not seen a single consensus on who the third quarterback is, who the fourth quarterback is. Next year is a definitive 2 quarterback draft class, so it's a lot of decision making that has to go on in Detroit. Of are you going to take that chance next year, and maybe your quarterback of the future is in next year's class, and if that is the case, then obviously you don't draft one this year. Then you wait, and obviously at that point, Jared Goff has to be on the roster in 2024 for a transitional year. Or do you pick the quarterback this year? Definitively, this year they're going to sit, and then you still need to get a gauge on things. Because again, to be real with you, Anthony Richardson, I don't think if he starts as a rookie day one somehow in the league this year, it's not going to be good. It's going to be. I don't want to say this guy's name because then that's going to connotate I'm talking about this guy's work ethic. I'm just talking about how the season played out. Jamarcus Russell, stats-wise, is what Anthony Richardson would be if he somehow plays this season. Not work ethic, not attitude, nothing about that. Nothing about Anthony Richardson to me has
but like
Jamarcus Russell.
That amount of production.
Exactly. And that's what was Jamarcus Russell's rookie stat line? Like 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions or something along those lines? Maybe.
I remember offhand. I remember we compared it to Zach Wilson through 20 starts a little while ago. Other than that, I know it wasn't good.
Exactly. So I think if you're Detroit, you're playing with fire. But as of now, if I had to guess, I'll say Jared Goff is still aligned by the year 2024. So that's how that goes. But man, hey, you brought it this week, Justin. That was really good.
Thanks.
That was excellent, brother. And it's always exciting when we get to start off the show on a good note, on a fun note. And we got to talk plenty of football. Well, the football does not stop. I mean, the fun really doesn't stop either. But let's go to the main focus of the show when it comes to the football talk. And guys, somebody got paid this past week. Jalen Hurts got a very, 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 very nice contract. And I say very multiple times because, God dang it, Justin, when you get paid over $200 million, that's a pretty dang good deal. If you ask me, for any occupation in life, getting that kind of money is amazing. It was a 5-year, $255 million contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, $179.3 million guaranteed. Oh, that's a lot of cash, to say the very least. So we've been talking about this offseason. Of course, there's a specific quarterback we've been talking about contract-wise that will be brought up in this conversation here when it comes to Jalen Hurts. But the next quarterback that gets paid is the former second-round pick out of the University of Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts gets paid by the Philadelphia Eagles for the absolutely outstanding run that they went on this season, which included going to the Super Bowl. And despite losing, Jalen Hurts showed out, of course, with his 3 rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So before we continue on that, guys, I said the Podfather was going to be here in some way, shape, or form. Well, the Podfather is here to open up the conversation.
Gentlemen, or good afternoon, gentlemen, I guess, whenever this show is being recorded for live purposes and whatnot. Wanted to come in here and just give my thoughts on the Jalen Hurts extension. And wanted to say that I think it's great. I think that Jalen Hurts deserves to get the money that he's getting, especially the $179 million guaranteed money that it is, which is phenomenal. I do want to give a couple of other quick little shout-out points, too. First and foremost, I want to give credit to Nicole Lynn, who is the agent from Clutch Sports Group that took care of this deal. I think she really did a nice job with it. And again, securing the bag for Jalen Hurts is always a win. As my dog goes away and chases some ducks, you can see she's on the patrol for that. The second thing I want to talk about too is this no trade clause that the Eagles have. It's the first one in history, in the team history, that they have had a no trade clause for a pick, and that's important because I think Jalen Hurts deserves that. He was a great player last year, he really was, and somebody that I think made me eat a lot of crow. Which, if you can do that, I'll give you your flowers and say that you're a very good player there. What I think it does also that's interesting is that it does lock up Jalen Hurts into Philadelphia, but it gives you kind of a layout as to what the Ravens might be looking to do with the Lamar Jackson contract. And the fact of the matter is that if a guy like Jalen Hurts doesn't get a fully guaranteed contract, the Deshaun Watson contract is probably the outlier. So if I'm Lamar, now that the Ravens have OBJ, I want to play some ball a little bit. But that's another conversation for another day. Back to Philadelphia. It's a great addition to get Jalen Hurts that money that he deserves, and the contract extension is huge for him. and it secures Philadelphia's future for a good considerable while. Having their quarterback under center, I think, will make them a much more viable team to constantly make the playoffs out of that wild NFC East division that we've said for about 20 years has been kind of in flux. But now, I think it's a little less in flux because Jalen Hurts is probably the best quarterback in that division.
Definitively, Jalen Hurts is the guy that runs the NFC East for sure. So, Justin, I want to throw it to you first. A very quick aside to the larger conversation this is going to cause, because every single time a quarterback gets paid, we talk about the next guys in line. One of those guys being this offseason who hasn't gotten paid yet. But just the contract, isolate the contract in by its own in a vacuum. What this deal is for Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's assurance. It's assurance that we believe that this is our guy. I remember, if you remember last offseason, we were talking about two specific quarterbacks that really had to prove themselves this year and take a major step forward, because if not, their teams had two first-round draft picks in what we expected to be a heavy quarterback class. And the first one is Miami and Tua, and I do believe he stepped up, although due to injury, we still have a lot of question marks there. And the second guy was Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts made that tremendous leap this year. The Eagles, give them credit. Howie Roseman did an excellent job putting him in position to do that. The A.J. Brown trade is one of the best trades we've seen all year and possibly in Eagles history, because I don't think we've seen a player get traded and immediately come into that and have that kind of impact. I don't know if any Philly fans want to disagree with me there, but yeah, so it's an excellent signing. And if I'm not mistaken, the first few years, very team friendly. They were comparing it to Daniel Jones, and he's not making as much money as Daniel Jones in his first 3 years. So I know it's a longer term contract. He's got more money guaranteed, but it's a very team friendly deal. And I expect Jalen Hurts to be there for the long haul. I expect a lot of success, and I expect this team to be better than they were last year after all is said and done.
Yeah, and now what this does, kind of what I was mentioning in last week's mock draft when it came to some of the mock selections, is now, at least for the Eagles side of things, this is great. When you lock down your franchise quarterback, that solves one of your big things. The most important thing, we always talk about this, no matter what, at the end of the day in football, no matter what happens in the postseason when it comes to running games, no matter what happens in the postseason when it comes to defense, the most important position forever and always in the NFL is the quarterback position. And when you get to lock in your franchise quarterback who looks to definitively be your franchise quarterback, that is a big thing. Now, to me, what this does, at least from the Eagles' perspective, is that with your 2 first-round picks this year and your picks in the future, you got to hit on these picks because there's to me, there's 2 ways to win. Either A, you get the quarterback on the rookie deal or the super cheap below market value deal, which that is very rare. So basically it's the rookie deal and you build the roster from there, and you give yourself a 4-year timeline on this is the cheapest he will be in terms of dollar amount to build the rest of the team. Or once you pay your quarterback, then you focus the value on everywhere else. That's what the Chiefs have done, obviously, over the last couple of years. When it comes to building around Mahomes, he's been paid. And a very similar situation, a supremely longer deal compared to this, obviously, which is going to get reworked here eventually one of these off seasons. But a pretty team-friendly deal that Mahomes continues to help them make cap space with reworking the contract year by year. But it's all about finding value in the other positions. Using first and second round picks on guys that'll be able to come in and help you out. Finding a late round draft steal, or using draft picks to trade for guys from other teams that are going to contribute that still have a couple years left on their rookie deals, aka a Kadarius Toney, right? So that is what's going to shift it for the Eagles. But obviously, you'll take having to do that if you believe you have your franchise quarterback. And Jalen Hurts was in the MVP discussion last season. He was all right. This is the thing we did point out during the playoffs. He wasn't at his best during the playoff run itself. He wasn't elite in the NFC divisional or championship games. But when it mattered the most, when it came to the Super Bowl, he, in terms of playmaking and in terms of touchdowns, he matched Patrick Mahomes in that. And some would say he outdueled Patrick Mahomes in that. And just the Chiefs were the team that ended up getting the win. We all know why. But no, in all seriousness, the Chiefs definitely deserve that. But this, to me, changes the way the Eagles are just going to have to do things, which is the price you have to pay for a team if you're going to extend your quarterback. So very much well deserved. I do like the fact that Rick gave the shout out to Jalen Hurts agency. I think he has, like, in terms of representation and like his agent, not even just like past his agent, in terms of like other people in the structure of his inner circle, it's like a predominantly women led negotiating team, representative team that he has. Outstanding job that they did getting him paid, getting him his money, and getting him a very good contract, to say the very least. The guy, second round pick out of Oklahoma. A lot of people low on him when he had to transfer from Alabama. Had a good season in OU with Lincoln Riley, and came out second round pick. A lot of people question that pick because remember, they still had Carson Wentz at the time on that contract. And people are like, why are you using a second round pick on a quarterback? You mentioned it, Justin. Howie Roseman, he made a bet. He probably didn't definitively know at the time that Carson Wentz would implode the way he did, but he made a bet and be like, okay, we're going to run with Jalen Hurts. And it paid off. Simple as that. It ended up paying off. And sometimes that's what you got to do in the NFL. Sometimes you have to make those gambles that are going to pay off down the line. And this is certainly one that paid off, to say the very least. And I also think the big thing was getting to sign him early, because the last thing you want to do is wait and see if Jalen Hurts does even better this year. It's like, let's just pay him now.
You don't want it to drag into the season. It's a distraction all year. Maybe your guy gets hurt, misses the last couple games. You don't know if you want to pay him. And then it drags into the offseason. He demands a trade. You put on a first-round tender where they'll lose 2 picks. And then all of a sudden, all these teams come out, including the Falcons, and they're like, we don't want to take him.
Even though they should want him.
Contract. And then you're just like in a bunch of turmoil all offseason. People are thinking you're not going to have a good pick. Maybe you trade up for a good quarterback. I don't know. There's not a specific situation I have in mind, but,
I mean, you're talking about the Dolphins. No, in all seriousness.
Yeah.
Obviously, and Rick mentioned it here, so now we bring it into the conversation. How does this affect Lamar, Justin? What does this do to the Lamar Jackson situation? Does this bring I don't know if this is a way to oversimplify the question, because I don't want to do that to put you in a box, but do you think in any way the Jalen Hurts contract extension is going to get us a step closer to any finality and what's going to be the case with Lamar here?
I mean, really, it depends on what he was asking for, because as much as you want to believe the rumors, they are just rumors. And I have not had heard anyone put substantial backing to any of these rumors. So I don't really know. Was Lamar asking for something in the vein of the Deshaun deal, or was he looking for a longer term guaranteed contract? I mean, obviously the guaranteed money is the holdup here. I don't think that was a farce, but if not, this should lay the framework for Lamar Jackson. I mean, when Lamar is healthy, I truly believe he's a top quarterback in this league. We all saw how he started last year. He was lighting it up. A couple injuries, lack of receivers, and all of a sudden, he's back in this conversation where is Lamar's style of play sustainable? But this should at the very least lay the framework. It should be somewhere in the ballpark, if not a little more. I could see people argue that it should be a little less because he's never gone to a Super Bowl. He doesn't have the same playoff success now that Jalen Hurts has had this past season. But to me, this is exactly what they should be looking at in terms of a deal. And if they do come to terms before the season starts, I believe it'll be somewhere in this vein. What did Jalen get? 179 million guaranteed?
Yeah.
I could see Lamar with 185, maybe even 190. I could see the Ravens lowballing him and him maybe taking a shorter term contract with guarantees, although I don't think it's in his best favor given his injury history.
Right.
But we will see. I mean, this has obviously been a messy situation for the Ravens. It's been messy for Lamar. It hasn't worked out in anyone's favor, to be completely honest. I don't think anyone is going to come out of this smelling like a rose. Both sides don't look very good right now. So we'll see. Does Lamar deserve money? Absolutely. He has kept that team relevant. He really has, because I don't necessarily know if they've made the best GM decisions as of late. I don't know if they've made the best personnel decisions as of late. It doesn't look like this team is set up to succeed long-term anymore, like the Ravens have for so long. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
Yeah, and especially when you consider, for all intents and purposes, was it not just weeks ago that maybe it wasn't Rashad Bateman, or maybe I'm confusing it for another wide receiver, but a deleted tweet where it was a wide receiver on the team was calling out the Ravens organization for some of the draft pick decisions they were making, for some of the choices they were making when it comes to skill position. Like, who would have thought that when a quarterback doesn't have any wide receivers to throw to and his running back room keeps getting hurt year after year after year and can't stay consistently healthy, who would have thought that guy's going to struggle a little bit? And when the offense is totally put on him, placed on his shoulders, Like who would have thought that there would be some issues with that?
We like to
Guys.
give these quarterbacks their flowers, but the fact is, this is a team sport. It really is. I mean, you ask any guy, they'll say, "Yeah, I'm a good player, and listen, I contribute to the team." But you got to give credit where credit is due. If you think Patrick Mahomes wouldn't thank Tyreek Hill for one of his Super Bowls, or Travis Kelce for one of his Super Bowls, or both of his Super Bowls, you're wrong. You're just wrong.
Ask Joe Burrow how happy he is that Jamar Chase is his number one receiver.
Yeah.
Do that. Ask, even though I constantly bury this guy. Ask Kirk Cousins how he feels about having Justin Jefferson as his number one receiver the last couple of years, or ask Ryan Tannehill how much of a blessing it's been to have Derrick Henry in that backfield for his Tennessee Titans tenure. Even though a better quarterback would have done more, but regardless of that, ask any quarterback in the league with a great weapon. Like ask Jalen Hurts how he feels about the fact that he has Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. I promise you, Jalen Hurts would give a massive credit to AJ Brown for the season he had. Like. We are not asking the Ravens to even be able to get a number one receiver at this point. Like we know that not every single team is going to have a number one receiver in terms of they could be a number one on any single team, right? Like we've listed a couple teams where Justin Jefferson number one on any team, Jamar number one on any team, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown are number one on any team. We're just asking you to get a bona fide number one for your team. You don't even have that. Like that's all that's been asking to do. Like it's approaching Aaron Rodgers territory of not putting in the skill position.
If you think about it,
investment.
Who is his best receiver in the past few years?
If we're speaking strictly wide receiver, because yes, Mark Andrews is a receiving tight end and he's talented.
That's not what I'm talking about.
But no, I don't. I'm clarifying that for the people that want to watch and try to be snarky about it. But if we're talking about wide receiver, Duvernay,
it was Hollywood Brown, and they traded him.
Yep.
Look, he had his issues. Absolutely, things didn't work out there. I get it. You got a first round pick for him. Absolutely. Who else have you ever brought in there? Des Bryant after he wasn't in the league 3 years?
Yeah, people thought that was going to work for some reason.
Sammy Watkins? You think Odell and was it Nelson Aguilar?
Yeah. Oh my God.
are gonna rectify this situation? Look, they're not terrible players.
I forgot Nelson Aguilar
number ones. Not anymore.
Oh my God.
I hope Odell can get back to that form. I really do. I don't know. I don't see their big picture anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I think I hope the Jalen Hurts thing now signifies that Lamar will hopefully sign soon. And again, I think the big thing you point out, Justin, is that with the whole contract reports and rumors that we're saying, look, man, you guys got to understand, don't be tricked by the news stream. At the end of the day, all that stuff is coming from one camp, and it's coming from the Baltimore Ravens. And if you don't think that the Baltimore Ravens are trying to apply some sort of public pressure on Lamar to just sign this deal, you are sadly mistaken. That is the one thing that an agent is very good at in regards to being able to help control, which is the news that gets put out. It's clear that media-wise, Lamar is in a losing battle when it comes to not having an agent. The Ravens are masters at this. Like Ozzie Newsome his influence is still in that organization no matter what, even though he's no longer the main guy in charge and hasn't been for the last couple of years. But this is an organization that knows how to sign guys, knows how to get extensions done. And their franchise quarterback now being the problem, I don't even want to call it a problem, but now just wanting to get as much as possible, that's a big thing. And at the end of the day, ownership is very much a factor in this. We know owners are greedy. we know owners don't like spending money if they don't want to. Justin, here's a fun fact that you may not realize. Billionaires actually don't like spending their money as much as you think. I mean, they like having it, and they do spend it, but they don't like spending it as much as we think they like spending it. Because there's no reason that Lamar Jackson shouldn't have a contract. But I hope, like you said, I hope that this contract is able to bring us closer to finality. Like you said, I think the guarantees now that, I mean, if there's one thing that this contract does, I don't want to say it hurts the Ravens, but Lamar's guarantees are going to be higher than Jalen Hurts' guarantees. There's not going to be a shadow of a doubt. You could say, yes, Jalen Hurts has led his team to the playoff success. I would argue one of two things. A, Lamar Jackson has been that damn Ravens offense the last few years, and I think there's only one or two other quarterbacks that could have ran that similar skill set for the last 3-4 years. And I don't know if they necessarily would have run it at the same high level as him. And he's won an MVP. He is the reason they've made the playoffs. He is the reason that they have been a playoff team the last few years, and he has regular season MVP. There are plenty of factors as to why Lamar Jackson should have that guaranteed money, and at least at a pretty high amount. And we'll see how this all comes to a head. Again, I'm with you. I hope it's soon. Just to end this. Like, I don't even care if the Ravens are able to keep him at this point. Just end the damn
I
discussions.
will say, just to be fair, I know we are generally a pro player platform, but you do have to take into account his injuries and his passing numbers, which, again, you have to put some fault on the Ravens for not getting the right guys there. But passing-wise, in a full season, which he hasn't been able to play, coupled with his injury numbers and style of play, make a guaranteed contract very risky for this kind of guy.
So, I'm not even saying guaranteed contract.
No, I know.
Just a high guarantee.
Well, but that's the issue right now is the guaranteed money. I truly believe that that's still what's holding this up. Is that they'll give him $230 million. It won't be guaranteed.
Right. It won't be fully guaranteed.
No,
definitely.
So what number do we need guaranteed?
Well, I think now Jalen Hurts said it. Even if Lamar is willing, and again, we don't know because he doesn't have an agent. Again, this is the one thing I don't like about him being not having an agent. He doesn't have an agent to help control the news cycle on his end. Let's say hypothetically Lamar is off the stance of, okay, I got to get the fully guaranteed deal like Deshaun Watson. Now that Jalen Hurts is signed, Lamar is going to be like, okay, baseline, $180 million guaranteed of that. Why? Because look what Jalen Hurts got. Look what he's done. Look what I've done. Playoff success withstanding, like you said. Like, it's right there. And it's right there. So I think obviously it's a wait and see, but hopefully, I stress, hopefully, this could just come to an end already. God dang it. At this point, just because I want to see Lamar sign somewhere, I want whether it is with the Ravens or whether it's with someone else, which I think it might just be with the Ravens at this point, I want the excitement to now be culminating of Lamar Jackson's going to be playing football next season, and he's going to have a fire under him to try to lead this team deep into the playoffs with his new contract. So that's I think what we all hope for at this point. But hey, at the end of the day, Lamar, freaking get your money, dude. But let's figure this out. In Baltimore, get him a little bit more than OBJ because, spoiler alert, I don't think that's going to be enough. Especially because I also don't think it's, if we talk about injury-riddled quarterback, you want to talk about injury-riddled receiving room and skill position group. Holy hell. Lamar Jackson has lost a running back every single season in his career, I think, since he became the starter. I don't even think that's hyperbole. Like, everyone gets hurt there. I don't know what's happening with the Baltimore Ravens medical staff. I think we need to invest more in the medical staff than we are with these scouting department in the first round pick, man. I mean, if you're not even hitting your first round picks, at least get a training group that gets your guys healthy, for God's sakes. My God. So, anyways, Lamar, we will go back a little bit onto the idea of the Jalen Hurts and Lamar stuff in a few moments here, ladies and gentlemen, because we do have more contract talk coming up. But again, the title of things, it's the pre-draft show. It's the pre-draft news. So we want to talk a little bit about pre-draft stuff going in here. We've kind of mentioned it already, the rumors of what teams could do. We talked about it heavily with the Detroit Lions earlier in terms of what they could do with this draft with the draft this year and how things could fall out. Talked about the Carolina Panthers. There's the smoke screen now of now it's not CJ Stroud, now it's definitively Bryce Young. And now, like Justin said, basically the character assassination of CJ Stroud, which, oh my God, Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. There's just something people don't like about Ohio State quarterbacks, Justin. Like, this time of year.
I don't know if it's accurate or not. I'm just saying, like, this was a kid that was the number one overall pick like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now he's like a bad guy. He's failing all these intelligence tests. He keeps blowing off the Mannings. Like, I don't know.
Which, look, I'm gonna be real with you, all due respect. Like, I know Peyton and Eli are like kind of funny and stuff. I don't blame a human being if he just doesn't want to hang out with them. Like, Eli's a dork.
He made a commitment to go to their camp and then didn't show, supposedly.
I mean, what's the reason? If a family emergency happened, I don't blame a guy.
Never answered. I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? Again, also Eli Manning, not necessarily surprised. Anyways, there is another name in the rumor mill that's going on. Trey Lance, guys. We talk about what could happen in this year's draft, guys. We talk about CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, where they could go, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. Let's talk about a quarterback that's already been drafted into the league, hasn't had a lot of playing time, but is honestly one of the more intriguing. If we're talking about like top 5 quarterbacks in the league that are just oddities because of their situation, I would argue Trey Lance, just as an oddity because of his team situation and everything surrounding him, is certainly up there in discussions for what his future is going to be. So before we continue the conversation, of course, Podfather Rick got us started with the Jalen Hurts stuff. Podfather Rick will get us started here as well, ladies and gentlemen. What does the Podfather have to say about the Trey Lance? I don't know if we would call it a debacle or whatnot.
About these Trey Lance rumors a little bit here. So I think there's some validity to them. Obviously, Brock Purdy kind of made Trey Lance a little irrelevant last year. Yeah, he was hurt in the very beginning, but the emergence of Mr. Irrelevant as the savior of football in San Francisco, if you will, kind of put into question whether or not Trey Lance is valid. And I think it's still a fair argument to ask for. I mean, especially considering that Purdy is, coming back. He might be a little bit banged up, but, who knows. And the 49ers did just sign Sam Darnold. So, that quarterback room is Darnold, Lance, and Purdy. Now, there's still something on the horizon that maybe they can get Aaron Rodgers, but well, I don't know anything about that, so we'll see what happens with that. The thing with the Trey Lance trade is twofold. One, you have to be confident enough in Brock Purdy's health to be able to get rid of him. And I'm not necessarily sure that the Niners are. I mean, that UCL is an interesting injury there. So I don't necessarily know if I would trade him on that ground. But the second thing is you have to kind of be aware of what you're going to get for him. Now, San Francisco's in a very interesting spot in terms of draft capital. They have 11 picks in this draft coming up, but none of them higher than 99. So I don't know if maybe they're going to think that they can get a couple of higher third-round picks for Trey Lance. That might give them a little more capital and a little more validity. But I've seen a lot of fourth and fifth round selections as well. One trade that I did see that interested me a little bit was Trey Lance to Tampa Bay for their third-round pick. Because I think that if you're the Buccaneers, you have to kind of get anybody and everybody in that quarterback room. I mean, if you're going to use that pick on Tanner McKee, why not trade it away for Trey Lance instead, right? So Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, Kyle Trask in Tampa Bay, if you add Trey Lance to that room, maybe you give Trey Lance a second chance and you give him an opportunity to kind of work with different receivers and work in a different skill. It could be an interesting selection there. Bottom line is, I don't think that if you're the 49ers, you pull the trigger on a Trey Lance trade unless the offer is good. If it's like a couple more third-round picks higher than what you have, I consider it. If it's a few fourth-round picks, though, there's no real value in that for me. So I wouldn't do that if I was the Niners. So it really depends upon what the trade packages come back for Trey Lance in this scenario.
So Rick totally buys the idea that Trey Lance could be traded. Interesting tenure for the young Trey Lance, to say the very least, so far in his NFL career, Justin. In his rookie season, he got some playing time towards the end. I don't know. It may have been due to like a temporary injury to Jimmy G, or maybe they were just sitting him. I want to say maybe it was due to injury. He played a game. I want to say he played a game against the Seahawks. I think he played a game against the Texans his rookie season, and had a couple games there, threw a couple of touchdowns. So he got some time there. And then going into this season, he was supposed to be quarterback one, and his debut game of the past season was in a monsoon against the Chicago Bears. I kid you not. It was basically a tornado warning on the field, plus rain. It was not a good game, to say the very least. And I want to say it may have been me who picked that game in the first week that we had the Somewhat Sports picks for. And to say the very least, that didn't go well for me. At least I think it may have been me. I'm not sure. Maybe it may have been you. It was one of us, I want to say.
I did.
It was you.
I picked the Niners. I was not happy.
You know what that was? That was the Niners Broncos week.
Yeah, it was. I picked both of those teams. I think I got one win right.
Yeah, and that was that was the last week. Justin was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to pick both these teams so consistently, to say the very least. Although that benefited me when it comes to the Niners. But in all seriousness, so Trey Lance, very brief period of time to start the season out. Then of course he eventually gets hurt. Jimmy G steps in. I think things would have been fine if it would have just been Jimmy G that had finished out the season. But then Jimmy G gets hurt. And then, as we know, big clock Brock, because it was Brock Purdy time, ladies and gentlemen. He comes in and he absolutely just performs well. I think it was 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions to end the season. Enters the offensive rookie of the year conversation late, even though it was going to go to obviously Garrett Wilson, but it was between Wilson and Olave. Wilson and Kenneth Walker at the time. Shout out to Chris Olave, though. He had a good rookie season. He enters the combo late, gets them to the NFC Championship game, and gets hurt in the NFC Championship game. And now, like Rick mentioned, the UCL, basically Tommy John surgery. I think he only just recently got the procedure, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple weeks back. And so now the question is, when is he going to be ready? I don't know if he's necessarily going to be ready by the start of the season, just because in me trying to project mentally, if Tommy John typically keeps pitchers out for a full season whenever they get hurt, and we're talking about like at least a calendar year from by the time they got hurt to going into that next season, with how late in the season he got hurt, maybe it's a little bit different when it comes to football, or maybe the procedure.
I think that it's going to be different also because I don't think these pitchers have to worry about contact as
Right.
much.
Right.
So I would think that maybe he would be less likely to be cleared by a doctor. But yeah, there's so many different things to consider in this situation. I mean, the last time Trey Lance strung 2 starts together that he finished the game was in 2019 in college.
Oof.
Yeah, this is a kid that when he started, he was good for a couple of starts last year. He wasn't great in his one start this year, but it was in a monsoon. And then he was immediately injured in the next game, I believe in the first quarter. So there's nothing but question marks about someone that the 49ers traded 3 first-round picks for. And what even would be the value of a guy like Trey Lance? I mean, I don't know how to answer this either. I mean, it might be there, but 2 years removed, just because you had one guy who played very well, albeit on an excellent team, who are you gonna trade him for? What are you gonna trade him for? There's just too many questions for me to answer this. To be completely honest.
Right. So I want to at least throw the initial question out when it comes to this. Obviously, when it comes to a rumor like this, do you buy the rumor generally, and do you think there's any modicum of truth into the 49ers having legitimate interest in trading away Trey Lance?
I think that it's something that I think if they were blown away by an offer, they would consider it, especially because they have Brock Purdy. They just signed Sam Darnold. They'll have their option as for late round quarterbacks. I think that it's a very good system, so I don't really think that they believe they need that first round blue chip talent there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would be fantastic. I don't think they'd turn it down, but I don't think that's something they're considering at the moment, especially because who's going to start for them this year? Are they planning on starting Sam Darnold at the beginning of the year? Is Trey Lance even healthy enough to play at the beginning of the year? We don't know when Brock Purdy's coming back. We don't know the story on Trey Lance. There's so much unknown that I can't tell you which way they would be leaning either way. You could hear all the rumors, you could listen to them, but yeah, would they be open to it? Possibly. I honestly don't know.
Right. And do you think so? Rick kind of mentions it when it comes to what they could get back. In that, let's say hypothetically, the Niners want to trade him. That they're gonna, despite the fact that it would be a very costly cut of losses because they have to trade a lot to get up to the pick for Trey Lance. Let's say hypothetically they are going to trade him. What team is there? A team you could think of off the top of your head, Justin? If not, don't worry about it. But is there a team you could think of that might be interested in Lance? And then what would the compensation be? Because I'm with you in terms of he hasn't done on the field to make you think, well, they're going to get a lot back for him. But for me personally, and maybe this is just the hockey school of thought coming back to me, if there's one thing I've seen in professional sports many times, there's 2 things that'll buy you a lot of stock in the league: where you were drafted and where you were coveted initially, and is there potential? And despite the fact that, yes, I know things have not played out, I'm sure there's at least one team out there that could see Trey Lance as still having potential, at least in their scheme. And I think to a lot of people, the fact he was drafted 3rd overall is still why not give this kid a chance? He was 3rd overall for a reason. Now, should he have been drafted 3rd overall? Who knows? Honestly, at the end of the day, I think if we did a redraft, I think most people would agree he probably falls out of the 1st round at this point. But we can't live in that alternate world. We can't live in the multiverse because God knows I would want to go to a different universe where my life is different. So we're staying in this verse. Trey Lance was drafted 3rd for a reason. And I think a lot of people still feel he has the potential, that he still has some skills. So all of that put together, what do you think the compensation package back for Trey Lance would be?
I don't think it's a lot, to be completely honest. I mean, to me, this screams more Ben Simmons than LeBron James. It's true. And look, the kid has the genetic tools. He's a big kid. He's got a good arm. He's accurate, but he can't string anything together. He hasn't played. He's not playing now. I don't necessarily know if it's like a work ethic thing. I don't mean to compare him to Ben Simmons in that way, but it's like what has this person done?
Right.
I mean, sure, he had a great year in 2019 in college. He was playing Division II ball. He had 28 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 14 rushing touchdowns. Fantastic. Almost 3,000 yards passing and over 1,000 yards rushing. Again, fantastic. It was 4 years ago in college. Kid has not played a full season of football since then. All right? I don't care what you took him with. That's not what his value is today. You valued him as 3 first-round picks and the 3rd overall pick in 2020. He's not that valuable today. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the sunk cost fallacy is just that, a fallacy. It depends on which way you want to go. But if you've devoted that much time and resources to Trey Lance, when is the right fit? When is the right time to let a quarterback like that go? If you've obviously seen that he's not the guy and you're ready to do it, that says something to me. Because, again, you don't have the on-the-field product to show for it. All you're looking at is in practice and what he does when he's healthy. And if you're willing to trade him now, there's a reason. Don't get me wrong, Brock Purdy makes that trade possible. But if you're willing to trade him today, there's an issue, especially with Brock Purdy not being healthy. So I certainly don't think they're getting a first-round pick for him. I wouldn't even really give up. If I was a GM, I wouldn't give up a second. Or maybe I'd give a late 3rd if I had it. And that doesn't really help the Niners. Right. So a late 3rd this year and maybe a 5th next year, depending on the player. But I'm not giving up the world for Trey Lance, a developmental quarterback that hasn't played football in 3 years, has never really had the production on the field. He played okay in his 2 starts when he was with the Niners the year before. But what am I trading for here? I could just as easily take a quarterback in this year's draft.
Yeah. Even in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, you might just be able to take a quarterback that has
played better competition and has better prospects in theory, or the same measurables as Trey Lance. So I don't know. Like I said, it's a real toss and it's a real toss up for me because can I see what the Niners saw in him? Absolutely. Do I see it now? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I don't think so.
Well, also, and you kind of said it before the show, like, I at least I'm assuming it was about these rumors. Like, you're not necessarily buying the rumors, are you?
Well, I'm not buying the rumors in terms of Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
If that was the case, and they were going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, short of giving up their 1st and/or 2nd next year,
right,
it's not happening. You know what I mean? And I don't see them doing that. Because if neither one of these quarterbacks work out, like, don't get me wrong, Brock Purdy looked excellent last year. He really, truly looked absolutely excellent. Can he be a starter in this league? Can he be productive? Can he put them in championship position? I think so. But he started how many games? 6?
Yeah.
And then he had a major UCL injury, had to have surgery, might miss his 2nd season. Trey Lance, I wouldn't think the Packers are interested for all the reasons we just said.
Right.
So what are you really trading for Aaron Rodgers?
Especially because the Packers already have a developmental former 1st-round quarterback that they need to get answers from in Jordan Love already. So it makes no sense to have 2 of those guys.
Well, there's safety in numbers, so to speak. If you're throwing something at the wall and you hope it sticks, it's better to throw 2 things than 1. The odds double. So they go up at least. So yeah, I don't see it. I also don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to go there for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I mean, it's in theory just as good a team, if not better. And I think it's his hometown team, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, doesn't he still hold it against him that they never selected him 1st overall in that draft?
That could be it.
I think that is legitimate. Yet I think like he still holds it against the San Francisco 49ers for not selecting him top overall.
We also have The Last Dance.
Very true.
And he took that personally.
Exactly. Like, people got to understand, guys, these professional athletes, say what you want about them, they got long memories. They remember.
The thing is, it is very hard to have the motivation it takes to continuously be great year in and year out. And when you see greatness, they are the kinds of people in whatever they do.
Yeah.
The people that are great at things find motivation wherever they could find it.
Yep. Absolutely. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's fake. Shaq.
That's why I'm excited to see that next Lakers Grizzlies game.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a football podcast, though.
Yeah, we don't care about
Another
that.
time.
That other sport. Nah, actually we do, but not for the show. But no, interesting conversation. I'm with you. I think Trey Lance, like, I don't see. I think it would be just a massive red flag against John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan if they trade Trey Lance for all that they had to do to get him, for all that it was supposed to be this season. Like, he was supposed to be the starter. He was supposed to be the guy. And it all got swept away, literally and figuratively, from game one with the monsoon that they had to play in to that game two where he gets hurt early on, like you said. I don't think it would be smart to trade him, just because, and this is not me trying to make up a reason of, oh, he still got value. This is more just so me saying you invested way too much to give up on him now. I think this, because Brock Purdy's hurt.
Fallacy. Do you think that this is your guy for the future? And do you think that this guy is worth holding on to and keeping? If you don't think that, and you know that today, it costs you less to get rid of him now. Because if he goes downhill, you're going to get nothing for him. One.
Right.
The stuff that you had that you gave up for him is gone. You're never getting that back. It's too late. True. So keeping him will only hurt you in the long run if this is not your guy. That's a guy that's going to take reps away from Brock Purdy. It's going to cause a distraction and issues in the locker room. You're going to have a division. Which side are you on, Purdy or Lance? If this is not your guy and you know that today, get what you can for him.
Even if it ain't much. Fair enough. I mean, honestly, an extra third-round pick, not the worst thing in the world. I mean, at least for me personally.
Had like 5, so.
Just this year.
Yeah, it's wild. For a team that has no draft capital, they have a ton of draft capital. I mean, their first pick isn't until 99, but then they have like the next 4 picks.
I was going to say, we know for the fact of how many picks they have because you made all of them and you were basically the entire end of the draft. Oh my God. That was one of the funny things when I was dividing up the picks, picking like who had to take San Fran. It's like, all right, so Justin's in the draft. That was good. I mean, hey, if they draft anywhere near as good as you did last week, Justin, I think they'll be just fine in all regards. But that could just be my bias personally.
It's gotta fall the right way.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe last question with Trey Lance. If you had to pick a team that's going to take a shot at trading for him, who do you think would take that shot?
That's a good question. I was looking at teams, and yeah, there are teams that I think would benefit from taking a shot, but I don't know if anyone would.
Do you buy the Minnesota Vikings have been like the main team I've seen in these rumors?
I could see the Vikings. I could see Vegas. I could even see maybe New England taking a crack at him. But
you know how happy Rick would be because that means Bailey Zappe's getting the start.
No, if New England trades for Trey Lance, then Bailey Zappe's not starting.
I mean, why would they keep Mac Jones? That's the thing.
No, they would get rid of Mac Jones, but if you're trading for Trey Lance, you're starting Trey Lance.
You think so? I think Rick would be convinced that it's the Bailey Zappe.
I like Bailey Zappe. He played well last year. He made a few mistakes. He was a rookie. But no, if you're giving up draft capital,
you gotta start the guy right away.
Yeah, you're trading for Trey Lance. You're starting Trey Lance.
I'm with you. I'm just saying.
That situation. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you have Mahomes, you're not starting Trey Lance if you trade for Trey Lance as backup. It's just not happening. But right. Yeah, no.
How broken would that be if the Chiefs just traded for him for whatever reason?
If the Chiefs traded for him, I would say he kind of is going to end up going the way of Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not work out the same way. Maybe he gets another start later on. Maybe he starts doing well. But to me, he screams more like a Jameis Winston, the Teddy Bridgewater. Guys that had a chance to start, have played well, but have never really had the production and consistency to stay a number one guy for that long.
Right.
And end up being a backup for the rest of their career. And he'll be a backup on a mid-level team with a lot of talent that is struggling at quarterback, and he'll have his chances to start. And sometimes he'll look great, and other times he'll look like they need to find another quarterback. But the injuries are really what concerns me. Like I said, if this kid could stay on the field, his value just skyrockets. But we haven't seen that. We really haven't. So,
yeah. And if he is going to be traded somewhere, it would have to be to a team that's an ideal situation that if he, like you said, if you're trading for him, there should be at least be the idea that he should be starting relatively early.
Well,
It's got to be to at least a relatively competent enough team where you have the situation there to mitigate the chances of him getting hurt.
I did just have an interesting thought.
Oh, say it.
Baltimore?
Ooh.
Kind of fits what Lamar does. I'm not saying he's going to be Lamar Jackson, but they're really having an issue and they want a low price quarterback. I know they just re-signed Snoop Huntley, but look, I might give a shot at Trey Lance.
Okay. So what would happen to Lamar in that situation then?
I would assume Lamar's out. If you're trading for another quarterback and you signed a backup quarterback, you're not going to have money tied to 3.
Right, but would that not mean they need to at least consider rescinding the tender on him? Because at that point, it's like...
Why? He'll find somewhere to play. You'll get 2 first-round picks for him.
Okay.
He doesn't want to play for you.
Right.
You're welcome to sign a low-money deal somewhere else. We're getting paid for it. You want to play for? We just signed 2 quarterbacks. You got to take less money. It's a business, unfortunately, and it's not fair, especially to the players. I know that. But if I'm looking at it from a purely business standpoint, and I see Baltimore struggling, and all of a sudden I can get Trey Lance for my 3rd-round pick, maybe I take a shot. I don't know if he's going to be the MVP that we think that Lamar was.
Probably not.
Can be. But if he can keep this team relevant and he can put this team in position to win games and can stay on the field, which has been a problem for Baltimore quarterbacs and Trey Lance, but
and running backs and wide receivers and just about every single offensive player on Baltimore.
That aside, if Baltimore sees the same thing, hey, might be worth a 3rd-round pick.
Okay, maybe. Who knows? I mean, Trey Lance, the number 3 overall pick, potentially being traded for a 3rd-round pick. Who would have thought? So maybe that means if he doesn't get the opportunity here soon, will Trey Lance's 5th-year option eventually be picked up? Probably not at this point. That's what we call a transition in the business, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the main event of the show when it comes to topic discussion. 5th-year options for not just quarterbacks. I mean, it's been a quarterback-heavy show, so we're definitely going to talk about the quarterbacks who are up for the 5th-year options. But it is 5th-year option time for the 2020 NFL draft class. Congratulations, boys! You've reached a 5th-year option territory. We're so proud of the 28 of you that have reached that point because, well, only 28 guys from that draft class are still in the league to be able to do that. So for those unfamiliar, maybe somehow with the 5th-year option, when it comes to first-round picks selected in NFL drafts, there is this is a relatively recent thing. This wasn't always the case. That a 5th-year option is tacked on that teams get to decide to accept or decline. That basically adds a 5th year to a guy's deal, but it doesn't necessarily mean it basically keeps them from free agency for another year, but also basically gives you a little bit more time to eventually get a contract negotiation and a contract extension there. When it comes to all that, as we've kind of said this, I think we said this in the past on the show before, but if I haven't said enough, please, ladies and gentlemen, understand this. The salary cap in and of itself is a social construct. Means nothing. Teams are able to find a way nowadays. This I will say this. If you can say this about all the professional sports league, I think we are in the era of the most intelligent salary capologists that we've ever had, because goddamn, the way these teams are able to just maneuver around the cap to get these guys under roster, to get these guys under contract, it's absolutely outstanding. And that's why I bring it up. So the deadline for teams to pick up the 5th-year options for all players selected in the 2020 NFL draft is May 1st, 2023. So actually, this is a pretty topical conversation here, Justin, as we have the draft here this upcoming week. All these guys are going to get drafted 3 years down the line. We're going to have this discussion about them, which, by the way, is after the 3rd year of the guy's career where the 5th-year option has to be picked up or declined, ladies and gentlemen. So that is why we are bringing it up. So 3 years down the line, we're going to be having this conversation about these guys, Justin. Will it be live or not is the question, but, that's for us to figure out 3 years from now. Irregardless, let's talk about this a little bit. And, of course, starting off the conversation for us, as he's done so eloquently so far in the show, is Pod Father Rick.
There are some interesting discussions that are going to be had here with the 2020 draft class and their 5th-year options that are coming up. Whether you want to hang on to them, exercise that option, or pass on that option depending on who the player is. I'm going to give you 3 names now, and I think they're all interesting discussions because I think you could definitely say that these players are good enough to earn the 5th-year option, but those organizations might not be in the same kind of capacity here. So let's start the conversation with the number 8 overall pick from the 2020 NFL draft. That was Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker from the Cardinals. Now, Simmons last year had 99 tackles, which was one short of consecutive years of 100 tackles, and he is an absolutely athletic linebacker. But the problem is the Cardinals have just failed him in all capacities. I mean, maybe if a new general manager and a new direction gets in there, they'll know how to play with him. But Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury did not know what to do with him. And good riddance to both of you guys, by the way. It's an interesting case because Isaiah Simmons is a player who can definitely be the cornerstone of a defense, but if you don't really know how to use him that well, and I mean, again, if the extension's too high for the 8th overall pick, maybe you don't exercise it. But if that's the case, he could be a very interesting player in next year's free agency draft class. Speaking of that, Jerry Jeudy, who I think was the 15th pick for the Broncos, or is it somewhere in that capacity? This ties back to what I talked about a couple weeks ago with Courtland Sutton with the Broncos, because you're not keeping both of them. You're keeping one or the other. And Jerry Jeudy has definitely been a more exciting athlete, but, there are some concerns, I think, that you can have with Jerry Jeudy. Namely, can he stay on the field, and can he continue to be that pass catcher that you want him to be? And, it's a big question mark, I think, for Denver. You have to keep one or the other. I think you exercise the option on Jeudy as long as you can trade Sutton for a good amount of picks. Remember, keep in mind, as I mentioned, Denver's got 67 and 68 to start their draft next week, and if they can move up and they can trade Sutton for a bigger player, or honestly, if you want to trade Jeudy and keep Sutton for a bigger player, that might be a better haul, but you got to be careful about doing that. And the last thing I want to discuss goes from the Ravens. I think it was the 28th pick, Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen had an excellent year last year as the linebacker and made a really terrifying duo with him and Roquan Smith. But the question is, are the Ravens going to commit $100 million to linebackers? Because Patrick Queen's going to command a lot of money, and you have Roquan Smith on his deal too for a lot of money. So the question really becomes, do you think that you can commit that much money to your middle linebacker core? I think you got to see how this year goes, but I don't know. I think Patrick Queen could be on the move as well, mostly on a monetary thing, unless they restructure some deals here or there. But it would be a shame if the Ravens gave him up because he was a really solid player for them last year.
So there it is. Rick gets the conversation started with us with three guys that he thinks may not necessarily get their fifth-year option picked up here. Where it is the conversation. So for those wondering, it is when it comes to the fifth-year option, there are a number of factors that head into how high this player's cap hit is going to be for how much the fifth-year option is. I have it in front of me by an amazing article. Shout out to Pro Football Network for the stats here because it made my life so much easier when it came to figuring all this out. Just for the brackets of how much these guys could make. Fifth-year options salaries for players who have been selected to at least 2 Pro Bowls are the highest when it comes to all this. So quarterbacks who have made at least 2 Pro Bowls by the time this conversation comes up, $32.4 million would be the salary there. Wide receivers would be 19.7. Offensive line would be a little over 18 million. Defensive tackles would be a little shy under 19 million. They'd be at 18.9 mil. Defensive ends at 19.7 mil, so on and so forth. There is a bracket for guys who have just made 1 Pro Bowl. So for example, it's about $2 to $3 million less from what I'm seeing across the board. Quarterbacks will only make 29.5 mil. I say only for the salary. Obviously still a lot, but just for the purposes of this. Defensive tackle, 16 million. Tight ends would make 9.7 million here compared to the 2 Pro Bowl tight ends that would make 11.3 million. So there's a couple discrepancies here. And then fifth-year option salaries for players who achieve certain playtime criteria. It's 23 million for quarterbacks, 14 million for receivers, 5 million for running backs, etc. And then fifth-year option salaries for players who have not met any of this criteria, Jordan Love, who are just the lowest of that number. So $20.2 million for quarterbacks, a little over 5 for running backs, 5.461, wide receivers just under 13 mil, tight ends 6.5 mil. So a number of different categories that guys have to meet, accolades. It's kind of similar to like the contract extensions you think when it comes to the NBA, where if you've made a certain number of all NBA and all-star teams.
Oh no, Jurg. All right, well, let's start to get into it then. So if we're going to look at some guys, first you got to look at the quarterbacks. And the first one that I'm going to consider here is Joe Burrow, who, I mean, I think obviously the question is whether or not they're going to extend that fifth-year option. Jurg, I started without you. We're on Joe Burrow.
No, it's perfectly fine. I have no idea what happened.
But, yeah, so the question here is not whether or not they're going to extend it, but how much is he going to get when they negotiate that contract? So, Jurg, you want to say anything about this?
No, I'm with you. I was actually going to be ready to start the conversation with the quarterbacks because so far there's only been one player whose fifth-year option has been exercised in the draft class as a whole, and that was Tua's contract. Tua got his contract exercised by the Dolphins back on March 20th for just a little over $23 million was his. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert both are getting $29 million, $29.5 million for the fifth-year option. Then Jordan Love would be the lowest of those numbers at $20.2 million. I'm assuming when you were talking about that, of course, obviously we're expecting Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert to have those fifth-year options get picked up. Probably Jordan Love's too, even though he hasn't played that much. I think it'll just make sense for Green Bay just so that they have a little bit more of a tenure to be able to test Jordan Love because now you want 2 years instead of just 1 to see what he can do at quarterback. But to the conversation you were most likely talking about with Burrow and then, of course, Herbert as well. Two guys that Justin is also familiar with when it comes to speaking their names on this podcast.
Burrow and Joe Herbert.
Exactly. Not only are we talking about fifth-year options, those guys, we're talking about contract extensions. And that's why we started off with talking about Jalen Hurts as the main topic of the show, because the Jalen Hurts contract, I kind of mentioned other quarterbacks are going to be affected. These are those other quarterbacks, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, who have both had a great individual success in his career. Joe Burrow, who has led his team to a Super Bowl as well, is going to certainly be in the conversation. And then Justin Herbert, his contract extension is going to be very well paid, considering all that he's done so far in LA. And I think for the most part, not to the same extent of what's happened in Baltimore with Lamar, but I think most people would agree. There were questions about, who's the Chargers franchise quarterback going to be after Phillip Rivers. Justin Herbert has very comfortably answered that question for the Los Angeles Chargers. So those two guys are certainly going to be making a very fair chunk of change here, Justin. I don't know how much more. I don't know if you were getting into the conversation again. Jalen Hurts getting $179 million guaranteed. These guys are probably going to get that and more.
I would assume they're going to get a little more. Look, especially Joe Burrow.
No, you got it, Joe Herbert.
No, yeah, Joe, especially Justin. No, stop it. Burrow is going to get paid a lot. He's the prototypical quarterback. He has done nothing but shine in Cincinnati, and it would be a waste for him not to become the highest paid quarterback of all time after this deal. I would not be surprised if it's something in the vein of Mahomes' 10-year, $500 million deal.
Right.
I think Herbert probably gets less. Herbert's going to be the interesting one here because if he doesn't sign first next year to his extension and Burrow signs, it'll be interesting to see if Herbert kind of holds out a little bit. Maybe he wants something a little closer. There's been nothing but success, at least in the regular season when he's played. So, look, he's got the numbers. He's got the passing yards. He's been back and forth with Mahomes and Burrow in the AFC's question of who the best quarterback currently is, and Josh Allen, excuse me. But he's never taken the step that the other guys have. So it'll be interesting to see if he feels he's worth that kind of money, what his agent can get him. But I expect it to be numbers that are eye-popping next year. I think that as good as Hurts is and as much as he deserves his money, he just set a floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Trust me, man. I'm with you. I think what Jalen Hurts just did there, I think it did. Maybe it wasn't on air. Maybe it was off air. We're talking with you and Rick before the mock started last week. But I think we had an idea because I think the rumors of the Jalen Hurts contract extension went back to last week. I think
they announced it right before we went on.
It may have been that.
Talk about it the next week.
It may have been that. But the idea was the Jalen Hurts contract with his extension. It was going to make a lot of people happy and maybe makes the conversation interesting now with Baltimore and Lamar. But you already know that Mike Brown, Spanos family, they're just God damn it. We have to pay our quarterback this minimum now, because at the end of the day, franchise quarterbacks, they come at a premium, and this is the new price tag. Like you said, guys, when they answer this, I don't think people always get it. It's not an agreement per se, but the top of the top at these positions, and this goes to all sports, they want to set the market. They want to they want to hit that reset button on the market, be like, this is the new minimum. This is what guys have to go for. This is what the guys after me are probably going to ask for if they are at a similar caliber. And with the Jalen Hurts contract, it's Joe Burrow and it's Justin Herbert. And I promise you, those two guys are going to get this kind of money. Now, other quarterbacks that are going to get this kind of money, who knows, considering the fact that, I can't think of a rookie quarterback over the last 2 seasons necessarily since these guys that I could say definitively will get this kind of money. I'm not sure there is off the top of my head. But these two are obviously in a class of their own. When we talk about the whole idea of you don't sit your rookie quarterback because you want them to play at their highest level as soon as you can be, these two are the reason why the math has changed about the expectations of a rookie quarterback. It's Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. They have completely changed the game when it comes to what you expect from your rookie QBs. I think we could definitively say that. And I think that the two of them are certainly going to get it. I'm with you. I think it wouldn't surprise me if the Bengals try to do what the Chiefs did with Mahomes on a longer deal where he's going to get paid and it's very flexible, but that deal is going to get reworked at least 4 or 5 years from now. Like, I think people forget the Patrick Mahomes deal is not set in stone forever. That deal is probably going to get reworked a year or two from now. It wouldn't surprise me the second Joe Burrow inks his deal, depending on what time it happens. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. Like, at least a year later, Patrick Mahomes' deal is going to get switched up by the Chiefs. Like, that's just how it goes. That's what the standard bearers of this quarterback market set. And then talking about Mahomes, talking about Josh Allen, like I think those are the two guys that would be in that conversation of their deals eventually getting reworked here. So I think these two guys are – Jalen Hurts has helped set a new floor, like you said. I think these guys are going to set the precedent of what the best of the best, like the pinnacle of this league is going to get. If you're not a top 5 quarterback, you don't get this money. You got to be in that conversation definitively. And that's what the conversation is going to become in. If we're talking about Allen – right now, I think most people would say the top 5 quarterbacks right now. I'm not going to say this in my personal order, but Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert, and I guess maybe you could put Jalen Hurts in there at the number 5. This is what these guys got to get paid. This is what you get paid if you're a top 5 quarterback in this game. And it's not going to be a lot of guys after these two necessarily that's going to get their extension, because I think we can agree here as we're going to go down this list here in a couple moments, Justin. Not all these guys are going to get in. We could definitely say Jordan Love might get his 5th year exercise, but I just more so think that's for the Packers to be able to get one more bona fide year out of him to be able to have him actually play, because he's had to sit for the first 3 years of his rookie deal. That's the only reason why I think his 5th year option would get exercised personally. I assume you're in agreement.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Just making sure. All right. Let's run down the list. It's in position order here. Once again, thank you so much, Pro Football Network, for making life easy for me when it came to the research here. Only one running back. Jesus Christ, I sound like a Looney Tunes character. Only one running back was selected in the first round of this 2020 draft class. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who actually got off to a pretty dynamic start in his rookie season. It was looking like he was going to be a piece of the future for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it didn't work out ever since then. I don't want to be necessarily unfair. He's dealt with some injuries. I think that should be held in consideration. But we know at the end of the day, like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has kind of fallen out in the Chiefs running back rotation, especially because of how Isaiah Pacheco played in the playoffs for them last season. But I was listing some of the ideas of price ranges earlier in terms of what guys could potentially get. According to the article here from Pro Football Network, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's 5th year option would be $5.461 million, which, if I am not mistaken, that is the 5th year option salary for players who did not meet any of the criteria, which is 2 Pro Bowls, 1 Pro Bowl, playing time, and then you didn't hit any of that. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in that last one, 5.461 mil for his 5th year option. Here's the funny thing, Justin. So I know some people would be like, 5.4 for a running back. He's got a pretty good skill set. Why not exercise it? I agree it's pretty low in what the potential of Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be. But, I mean, we're kind of talking about potential earlier with Trey Lance. This is a guy that, yes, he's shown flashes, has CEH, but at the end of the day, it hasn't necessarily been put all together. He's really lost his spot there definitively since his rookie season. And while I know $5.4 million doesn't sound like a lot, again, Patrick Mahomes is there, Travis Kelce's there, Chris Jones is there. Those are guys with high cap hits. I think $5.4 million means a lot to the Kansas City Chiefs. And if they're going to spend $5.4 million somewhere, I don't think they're going to use it on a running back. So I'm kind of 50-50 on this. I'm leaning towards I don't think they'll do the 5th year option when it comes to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What do you think, Justin?
This is one I would prefer to answer next week.
After the draft, you're saying?
Yeah, because if you really look at their depth chart, it's 3 guys, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco, and LaMichael Perine. So if they cut him, or not necessarily cut him, they're going to need someone for the future.
Well, they could just not pick up the 5th-year option. He just plays out the last year of his
No,
rookie
yeah, no, I know he'll still be on the team this year, but it's someone I could see being traded draft day one in the vein of Hollywood Brown and these kinds of guys. Not saying maybe they're going to get the same kind of compensation, but he's a guy I could see being moved next week, this coming week rather.
And then perhaps a running back with maybe their 2nd-round pick.
Or their 1st-round pick. I mean, they got 31. It's not like it'd be outrageous for them to take a running back at 31.
True. They literally did that with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
So, he's a guy that I think still can have production, but he's not the kind of guy whose body will hold up. Like sometimes you see these small players, and it's like, all right, because of their incredible athletic ability, they've broke through the trends, the common body type for players at that position, and you could see them succeed. And while he has shown flashes and he is an uber athletic guy, his size has been the issue. I mean, how many times do you see him run into the line and get bounced back? All a player needs is one handful of a jersey, and he's stopped in his tracks. So it's to me, it's really they haven't been able to get him the ball in space enough, and he's not that prototypical bruising running back that they expected him to be or expected him to overcome in his NFL career. So for that reason, I don't think they will accept his 5-year option. I'm curious to see what they would do in the draft and what they will do in terms of his contract, because I could see that's a guy that has some value that I think I could see being traded for like a 3rd-round pick. You know what I mean? There are teams that'll be interested in him.
And even let's say necessarily Kansas City, if they do trade him, like you're mentioning here, who's to say the team that he gets traded to, maybe they'll just pick up the 5th-year option because they're like, hey, $5.4 million.
His value is higher right now with the 2nd year as it will be in 2 weeks.
Okay. No, fair enough. It's certainly something to keep a tab on. I mean, for all the big names that we've heard that could get dealt, I think you just mentioned with Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, a guy who could very much be traded at the draft. And I think just an extra draft pick in the hole for Kansas City to do, which, I mean, they've done a pretty good job on. They actually have accumulated mid-round picks, and they're using those mid-round picks. They used at least, was it 3rd or 4th last season on, I forget his name. He was a tackle deeper in the draft that we talked about. What's his last name? Darren Kennard, I think. Darnell Kennard. I'm losing his first name, but Kennard, a tackle from last year's class that I think Darren. What's the first name? Darren. So Kennard, like he was with I want to say a 3rd or 4th-round pick as well. Very much a case where they trade Helaire here and they get that 3rd, 4th-round pick and they just use him maybe on offensive lineman, maybe defensive lineman, maybe corner. You know, something. I think for Kansas City, running back is not a need. Running back is a luxury. And yes, they want talent there, but it's not the most killer thing in the world if they don't have.
I have news for you. I think it's a need. I think Pacheco did great last year, but it was a team effort with McKinnon there. So I do think it's actually a pretty big need. I would not be surprised to see them draft a running back in the 1st round this year or trade for someone.
Bijan Robinson? No, obviously not. He's not going to be on the board
either, but yeah.
No, probably not. I mean, who knows? Maybe they trade up.
If the Chiefs gave up their 1st and, a 3rd next year to move up 5 spaces in the 1st round.
And they get Bijan.
And take Bijan. I wouldn't be surprised.
That might be dangerous. No, that might be. That'll be dangerous.
Well, that's the point. The idea is to keep their $500 million man dangerous for years to come.
Very much true. Very much true. Dangerous, not dangerous, because that guy, he's not that dangerous. Anyways, moving on. Let's go from running back. Let's quickly go down the wide receiver path. Rick mentioned the first of the wide receivers here when it comes to 5th-year option, Jerry Jeudy. He was kind of 50-50 on me. I think he brings up a good point. Maybe depends on what they're trying to decide here between him and Cortland Sutton. But let me just list the 5 wide receivers here very quickly, Justin. Give me a quick yes or no on the 5th-year option potentially being exercised with these guys. So let's just start with the first one, Jerry Jeudy.
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. I thought you were the first one. I thought you were going to go Justin Jefferson. I was going to say absolutely not.
Well, I'm just going in order of that.
In order of the thing. I'm going to say no. Mm-hmm. I think they draft someone.
Okay, fair enough. All right, CeeDee Lamb.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would be shocked if the Cowboys A didn't exercise that and B also didn't try to get an extension. done right away. I think CD Lamb's probably going to be extended this offseason. Jalen Rieger. I think we know the answer.
Next.
Exactly. Funny enough, his teammate, Justin Jefferson.
Yes.
And not only that, he's going to get very handsomely paid as a wide receiver. Him and Jamar Chase, the next 2 off seasons, are going to reset the wide receiver market, to say the very least. If you thought Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown contracts were something, just wait. Jets and Jamar are going to do something, to say the very least. All right, and the last of the wide receivers here, guy just had his first ever career 1,000-yard receiving seasons, had a career year for himself. Brandon Ayuk, San Francisco 49ers.
I think they accept him. I think he's integral to what they're doing there.
I agree with you. I think because they have Deebo Samuel locked in and because they have Christian McCaffrey, I think they view Ayuk as a valuable piece. And again, with the 5th-year option, maybe it's not right away, but a contract extension to perhaps lower the cap hit of that 5th-year option to spread it out. That's a very popular thing that teams do. I could see them exercising the 5th-year option and then tacking on like at least 3 more years on a contract extension. So realistically, it'd be a 4-year deal for Brandon Ayuk.
And if he plays well this year and the team's not where they think they would be, and they think they want to move him, he's more valuable with the extra years on his contract.
Very true.
That's someone that might come up in trade talks during the season.
Yeah, and if he potentially does have, let's say, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, you're getting a young receiver back-to-back 1,000 yards on 1 year. It's pretty good. It's not bad. $14 million for a guy with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. That's actually, for NFL, that's actually pretty good now, considering where some top-end wide receivers are getting. All right, offensive linemen here. There are, I just want to do the math here really quick, 6 guys here on this list. So similar thing, quick yes or no. Andrew Thomas, New York Giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the franchise left tackle. They
need some. They've had a revolving door at tackle until he came in. So I think that they need some continuity. The more continuity on the offensive line, the better.
Absolutely, they're going to. Again, I think it's similar to Justin Jefferson, Burrow, and Herbert. Burrow and Herbert. 5th-year option is going to get exercised. I think he's going to get that contract extension. They're probably working on that as we speak. Let's be real here. Jedrick Wills Jr. of the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, similar thing. Very talented. Done a pretty good job here for the Browns. And continuity, especially with Deshaun Watson back in the mold here, you got to give him his protection on that offensive line. That's something he had in Houston, for all you want to say about maybe how the Texans failed him when he was at the peak of his offensive, on-the-field powers. They had Laremy Tunsil for him. So you got to keep the offensive line for him. I'm going to say the guy that's listed 3rd here last, because you're going to know why, obviously, when I name him. So let me skip a guy here. Tristan Wirfs.
So I know who it is. Tristan Wirfs, yes. They're going to need, again, the continuity is probably the most important of the offensive line, rather, is probably the most important thing that they can have in Tampa Bay right now, especially with such a question mark quarterback.
Quick question. Do you think, because Tristan Wirfs has been the right tackle there because Donovan Smith was the left tackle since he entered, do you think he'll be moved to left tackle, or do you think they'll focus to get a left tackle in this draft class?
No idea.
No, fair enough. Austin Jackson, Miami Dolphins. I'm personally saying no to Jackson.
I think yes. And again, like I said, continuity is one of the most important things in the league in terms of your offense. And the offensive line is a position group that gets better the more they play together.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can get that working out, I mean, worst comes to worst, he's got some depth, and I don't mind sinking a little extra money into my offensive line. Worst comes to worst, I'll trade him or we can cut him. Nothing's guaranteed in the NFL.
Okay, you know what? You swayed me. I'll say yes for Austin Jackson, actually. Cesar Ruiz, New Orleans Saints. Now, the reason I bring him up is because I think I mentioned it last week when I was making the Saints picks, because I believe I did have the Saints in the mock. This is a Saints team that has already invested a lot in their offensive line. With the guys they have, Ramczyk, they have McCoy. Cesar Ruiz is now coming up. He's played well. I think there's some concerns because, again, they've done a good job getting out of it, but I think the Saints are still kind of close to the salary cap. And I saw the idea float out there, and this, I believe this affected maybe not my first round pick, maybe it was my second round pick with the Saints. What the Saints could do in this draft class. Maybe they're expecting to let go of one of these offensive linemen after this next season. Not saying now, I'm saying after this season. So Cesar Ruiz he's at the $14.175 million for his 5th-year salary. Do you think they picked that up?
Yes.
Same as the previous ones, offensive line just got to invest in it?
look, if you have a guy that started 4 years and you think he's going to start again this year, give it a shot. It's a guard. It's someone that will protect the interior. You need someone that's going to keep Derek Carr upright because you saw what can happen to him when he's running for his life.
Yeah.
Hold on to it.
And also, whether it's Alvin Kamara in the backfield or somebody else, you need good interior guys to help with the offensive line for the running game. And that running game, very much massive part of the Saints scheme over the last couple of years, even with Sean Payton leaving last year. So very fair. All right, the offensive lineman who I didn't name, which we know it is, Mekhi Becton.
I'm so torn on it because injuries and other issues would dictate that realistically probably the answer should be no. But when he's been on the field, he has played very well. I mean, at one point we were considering him in his first year as one of the better linemen in the league. He is just such an athletically gifted guy. And I think the Jets will accept it. Again, it's not a ton of money, I think. I mean, it's
a little over 13 mil.
It's a lot of money, but it's not something that I think they are going to give up on, so to speak. I think he'll start at right tackle, which will probably be a little high for a right tackle. But yeah, I think they're going to hold on to him. I think he if he can stay healthy, will be an important player for this Jets team this year.
Okay. Interesting. So Mekhi Becton remains a New York Jet for at least an extra season potentially. All right, let's go to the defensive side. That was all the offensive guys that we listed.
What do you think?
Well, my thing is, it's interesting you mentioned right tackle playing him at because, is there someone on the Jets currently I'm not thinking of, or you're saying that they're going to draft a left tackle to replace him on that side?
Well, technically, Dwayne Brown played left tackle last year. They were moving Mekhi to the. Wait, no, is that how they started? Did they have Mekhi at left, and then they were going to play Dwayne Brown and George Font? I don't know. Either way, all of their tackles have played both sides. I expect Dwayne Brown to start at left tackle, at least in the offseason, and then we'll see who they draft. But I think the odds of them taking a left tackle at 13 are higher than a right tackle. I mean, maybe they got someone that could be in between, but Mekhi has been able to play both in his career. So I think if they're going to move someone, they'll probably move Mekhi to right.
Okay, fair enough. Now, yeah, I'm with you. Also because I think of all these guys, $13.5 million, it's not that bad. It's pretty good.
Great.
I mean, but again, it's just for a year.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to consider. Now, yes, the guarantee of the 5th year option is something you have to consider, and how easy would it be to move potentially if you end up changing plans? Who knows? I mean, maybe depending on what happens over in Green Bay, if you need more salary filler, Mekhi Becton could be in that deal. So,
yeah, we'll see. I don't know if Becton is a player that would be included in that, but we'll see.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, if you're Green Bay, I think you'll take what you can for Aaron Rodgers at this point.
That's
in theory.
That's fair.
All right. Defensive side of the ball. Let's go. All right. From Jesus Christ. From Rick's beloved Washington Commanders. I'm switching first letters here. Chase Young. 17.452 is his 5th year option, just for the context there, Justin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something they're gonna.
Even with the injury issues he's had, he's the pillar of that defense for a reason. He's supposed to be the face of that defense.
Absolutely, but I think Rick is right. I think they're probably going to trade Sweat, if I'm not mistaken, which means that they'll still have some issues. And I think that the idea is that he'll be a cornerstone of that defense. If he can stay healthy for a year, if he can get back on the field this year, I think it will help them tremendously. And I think that's their plan.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I also think when he's been out there, he's been very impactful. When Chase Young has been out there, he's done his thing. And I think giving him a chance to get back fully healthy here will be massive. I think properly fully healthy too, because I think part of it is that he dealt with injuries in back-to-back seasons, and it messes with your recovery and rehab time when you have to deal with back-to-back injuries. I think if he could finally be properly healthy here, I think that could be a massive difference for him. So I'm with you there. K'Lavon Chaisson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. No?
Hasn't worked out.
Fair. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just...
No, I know.
Yeah, I would say so, especially because you did draft Travon Walker last year. And I think with Jacksonville, with how good of a season you had, I think you're in a position here where with one of your first to either your first or your second round pick, especially with the depth at edge rusher in this draft class, you could get. Are you thinking that is that you think you could get his replacement very easily in this draft with how
You
good the
need to
defensive
get his
line is?
replacement. Like I said, there have been guys that have stepped up. They did just sign Trevon Walker, or draft rather. I don't think that he's a guy that's really worked out. Let him prove himself this year on a contract deal, and maybe sign him to a small extension. But I don't necessarily think they're going to get in the weeds for a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. No, very, very fair. And didn't have much of a 2022, limited via injuries, but he hasn't done much in his career at all. He only has 3 career sacks. Not good for a guy that's supposed to add to the pass rush, to say the very least.
No.
So there's that. Now I'm with you. Decline that. All right, defensive tackle. Derek Brown, Carolina Panthers.
Yes, he's
Absolutely. Yeah, he is the anchor of that defensive line. Him and Burns, the two of them are like the top 2 guys on that defensive line. I don't think there's any long conversation that has to be had. They should have probably already done so. All right, Javon Kinlaw, San Francisco.
I think I'm going to say yes.
Mm-hmm. Is part of that because they haven't cut him yet, but Aaron Armstead hasn't necessarily lived up to the contract they gave him. You kind of drafted Kinlaw because you ended up having to trade DeForest Buckner away. Like, is that it kind of, I don't want to say waste, but if you lose a guy who you deliberately drafted to fill a need,
he's been good. He's been good enough for them. There's a little bit of an injury concern, but I think that they want to keep that defense together for as long as possible.
All right. Javon Kinlaw, you are staying in San Fran. And also $10.455 million, so not the highest number of that. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm looking at the numbers, that is in the criteria of 5-year options that players did not meet the criteria. So like you said, I think it's been an injury thing, mainly with him. So if he could get healthy, I mean, that's a pretty good defensive line that he gets to play on if he can finally put it together and get healthy. So, especially with them, they signed Hargrave. So you got Hargrave and now Nick Bosa. There's opportunity there for a third defensive lineman there to have a pretty good season. So there's that. All right. Guy that Rick brought up, Justin, Isaiah Simmons, Arizona Cardinals.
It's an interesting guy because that's a guy that came on later. It was very good last year, but I don't think he was very good the year before, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna say no. I think he's another guy that they maybe they try and put into a contract situation and see if he can step up or not.
Okay. Me personally, I think they will pick it up because I think the thing with Simmons is that I think his rookie season and for part of his second year, he was getting jerked around way too much by Cliff Kingsbury on the defensive side. I think the problem with defenders like Isaiah Simmons, and this was coming into the draft, this idea that, he could play multiple positions on the defensive side of things. I think of it also similar to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah before his draft. And yes, did I mention him in part to say his name? Absolutely. But I think with Isaiah Simmons, he was a guy that it was the lure of you could play him at different positions on the defense. A Swiss Army knife. As nice as it is to have a Swiss Army knife, Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think in Pittsburgh is the perfect example. Yes, he could also play multiple positions, and in certain schemes, they have him do it differently. But there is such a thing as jerking a guy around way too much to the point where he has zero consistency. If he's going to have a game where he played 12 snaps at, let's say, safety, 17 snaps at linebacker, and then maybe 8 snaps. I know I'm making up numbers here, but let's say 8 snaps on the defensive line. How is he supposed to get any consistency? Do you want him to be a pass rusher, or do you want him to help play the middle of the field with his wide-ranging ability, which he had coming out? I think to me,
do that, but he's probably not that guy.
But no, that's what I'm saying is that I think they tried to misused him his first year and a half, and I think he's coming along. And I think if you're the Cardinals, you have Kyler Murray injured for a good chunk of this season, so it's kind of reset. I think me personally, I pick up the 5th-year option to see if he balls out. And hey, at the end of the day, if he balls out, you don't have to worry about paying him next year. You have the 5th-year option to be the buffer of, okay, maybe, because it can sometimes be a thing where guys overpay a defensive player after one really good season. They don't have the buffer of that 5th-year option. I think of Nick Perry with the Green Bay Packers, not the same player as Isaiah Simmons, but he has one career season with a great sack total. I want to say maybe he hit 12 maybe in his career high year, maybe 11. It was something along those lines. And they pay him a big contract and they cut him 2 years later, right? I think if you pick up the 5th-year option with Isaiah Simmons, if he has a really good year 4, you don't have to necessarily think about paying him yet. You still have that 5th-year option and see, okay, is this a real year for him at the end of the day? And again, I think it's a similar thing. It's not the highest cap number per se when it comes to the 5th-year option. So I think there's like 12.722 is kind of rich, but it's not like, to me, it's not deal breaking. So I would personally pick it up. Los Angeles Chargers, Kenneth Murray.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think he's been fine since he has been in the league. I think he's produced relatively well, but I think part of it, the Herbert extension is coming up, and I think in terms of defensive players, he hasn't done anything to me. And if a Chargers fan wants to disagree with us, you're more than welcome to. I don't think Kenneth Murray has done anything per se that has made him irreplaceable on that Chargers defense. That's the thing. Your 5th-year option, you want to keep this guy in the fold. I don't think he's necessarily done something here to make him where it's like, oh, if we lose him, we're going to regret it. Not saying he's not a good player, but that's to me what the 5th-year option. The 5th-year option to me is meant to be like, we want to give this guy a legitimate shot to show out, or we want to extend him right away because he's a part of the team. So, and also they have some big contracts already on the defensive side of the ball. And can you fit? Well, I mean, I'm sure they could fit it. Again, the salary cap is a social construct here, but no, I'm with you. I think Kenneth Murray for now, no, but I mean, if they exercise it, it's not necessarily. It's a little bit of a surprise, not the biggest surprise. Jordan Brooks, Seattle Seahawks.
Jordan Brooks. That's another one I'm gonna say no.
Former Texas Tech Red Raider. I just feel that's worth pointing out because Tyree Wilson coming out in this draft, Texas Tech. I mean, and we also did project Tyree Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, or at least some mocks are projecting Tyree Wilson to the Seattle Seahawks. So it's very much a possibility. In his career, 402 total solo tackles, only 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble this past season, no interceptions. I'm not seeing a forced fumble, but that could just be the stat line I'm reading is not showing forced fumble. Oh, no, excuse me. No, 1 forced fumble this past season. Again, solid, but not necessarily. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say Jordan Brooks, he was part of the stretch of time where the Seahawks were picking sort of late in the draft, and they were kind of reaching for guys because they weren't going to have a 2nd-round pick. And they were like, okay, we got to get this guy now because he's on our board. And if we don't pick him now, we're going to lose him because we don't have a pick close enough. I think that may have been the case with him. Maybe I'm confusing him with someone else they selected. But he was one of those like late 1st-round selections the Seahawks made where you're like, really? So I'll say that. I'll say no as well to Jordan Brooks. Patrick Queen, Baltimore Ravens, the last of the linebackers.
I'm going to say yes. He's an integral part to that defense.
I'm with you. I think him and Roquan Smith will be an absolutely devastating duo. I know you still have to pay Lamar. Again, figure it out, Baltimore. Like, you have talent on that team. Figure it out to get these guys back in the fold, to say the very least. All right. These are the last 4 names on this list, all corners. Jeff Okudah, now of the Atlanta Falcons. 11.5 is his salary hit for the 5th-year option, just for context.
I would think the Falcons are going to pick him up. I mean, they just traded for him.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make. I mean, maybe you want to trade for a 1-year rental, and then hopefully, if it doesn't work out, you can go another direction. But I would think that they were going to pick it up.
It's interesting because he had some struggles his rookie season, but I think part of that was just he was immediately brought in to be quarterback number 1, and I just don't think the Lions defense was any good that year. Matt Patricia, I think, was his head coach's rookie season, and do we really need to say much more about Matt Patricia's tenure in the Detroit Lions? You have that. He then missed, I think, most, if not his entire 2nd season due to injury, and then he came back. I think it was decent last season, but the Lions trading him to Atlanta. I'm 50-50 because part of it is also let me just skip a name here really fast. A.J. Terrell of the Atlanta Falcons is also up for his 5th-year option. His 5th-year option is $12.3 million. So between the two of them, that is $24.8 million between 2 starting corners for the 5th-year option. I think because of that, I think they'll exercise Terrell. I don't know if they'll exercise Okudah.
That's fair.
I think just because that. If he was still on the Lions, I think the conversation would be different slightly. But because now they're teammates, and if you're gonna spend $28 million on your corners for 1 season, that's really banking on Jeff Okudah to have a massive bounce back campaign. Which I'm not saying he can't. I really did like Jeff Okudah coming out of the draft, but he definitely has a lot to prove there. All right, So I'm personally saying no to him and yes to Terrell. I assume AJ Terrell is a yes for you, Justin.
Yes.
Okay. Second to last name here, CJ Henderson of the Carolina Panthers, former Jacksonville Jaguars pick. He was the guy I mentioned a couple weeks ago. He was the cornerback that they traded, and I think they traded him for like a fourth when they traded him to the Panthers. They didn't get a lot back for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no for that one.
I'm with you. I think the Panthers did a decent job at addressing secondary, I think, in the offseason. I mean, mainly with Von Bell at safety. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for them to consider corner with maybe their second or third round pick, potentially. So I think CJ Henderson, I don't see his fifth-year option being picked up here. Okay. Last guy here of the Miami Dolphins. I really should have checked out to say his last name before this. I very much regret that. Noah Igbinoghene. I apologize for Noah if he's somehow seeing this. I will look up your name next time to make up for it. $11.5 billion. I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no as well. It's just a guy who hasn't really played a ton. I think he's played about almost 50%, maybe a little more.
And again, I'm going based off of how these guys are listed here. Even if he's maybe, let's say hypothetically, he's played more safety than corner so far in his career, that defensive backroom still has Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, who are getting paid very handsomely.
A lot. Yeah.
So I don't think you can necessarily afford a guy at $11.5 million who is not definitively locked down a role. And also, even if he's really good in nickel and dime coverage sets, like, do you really want to pay $11.5 million even if it's just for a year for a guy who's mainly effective in certain subset packages? I don't think so. So there is that. Those are all the 2020 draft class fifth-year options, Justin. A lot of guys are going to get that fifth-year option picked up and subsequently get paid well. And some guys, no. Apologies. Nothing personal, like we say. I mean, we're all for players getting their money. We hope all these guys are able to bounce back. But in this case, a lot of these guys, the salary cap might just be a little too high, or the situation is just not there for them in the case of Jeff Okudah being on the Atlanta Falcons. So that does it there for the 2020 draft class fifth-year options. Again, very interested to see what this current draft class a couple years down the line has. And I mean, Justin, a couple weeks ago, we reviewed last year's draft class. 2 off seasons from now, we're going to talk about those fifth-year options. So
absolutely,
that'll be fun to say the very least. All right, guys, that does it for all the main news items on the docket today. Because of course, it was a pretty slow week this week. Not a lot broke, but next week, Justin, is certainly going to be fun with the NFL draft happening. Obviously, I think because the draft starts Thursday, so we do our usual time next week. We'll have gone through the first 3 rounds, and I think we'll be streaming during like the last couple during day 3. So, do you want to give the people any? Because we do have one more video to play. Do you want to give any last second takes, hot take, trade, prediction, anything for the people before? Basically, last word on the draft. Anything crazy happening, do you think?
No, let's just get to it. I want to see it.
Okay. you want to see the last video?
No, I'm at the draft, but yeah, I want to see that too.
Oh, no, very, very fair. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys, if you have been to the show a number of times, first off, why are you still here? How are you still here? We appreciate you still being here, but, why are you committed to watching the show on a weekly basis? But even aside from that, you guys know how the show typically ends on a weekly basis. It's time for the Rant Podium. Full disclosure, I always, when Rick sends these videos, I don't watch them. I only listen to the first 5 seconds to see what the topic is, and then I label them. Do you want to know what he labeled this video, Justin, when he sent it to me?
What?
He said, Rant Podium, ? He's like, you'll see for yourself. I'm like, oh God in heaven.
See it.
So let's see what this Rant Podium is.
I hit on currently at the moment, actually. The point is that, it is better to do rant podiums in person. So I'm going to take this rant podium time and tell you a little bit of a story, if I may, about the 1936 NFL draft. And I promise you, there's something special going to happen at the end of the story. See, in the 1936 NFL draft, the very first NFL draft that ever happened, 2 of the 3 first overall picks never played pro football after being drafted. Of course, everyone knows the Chicago picked Jay Berwanger, who won the first Heisman Trophy with the first overall pick. But I want to talk about the number 3 overall pick, a young man who went to Notre Dame, and a young man who was involved in one of the great plays of what had then become known the game of the century. See, it went like this. Notre Dame played Ohio State, and Ohio State was up by a considerable margin. Notre Dame needed to come back and win that game, and they relied on this young player very heavily to do so. On one of the last plays of the game, Notre Dame called an end-around double reverse. The ball landed up in the hands of our star, who threw the ball all the way down the field to a waiting receiver who caught the ball in the end zone. Notre Dame won what was then called the game of the century. The Chicago Tribune noted this is a very interesting play because while the play was truly a Hail Mary, the odd ecumenical thing about it was that the ball went from a Catholic to a Protestant and then thrown down the field into the end zone to a young man of Jewish faith. That young man who caught the ball in the end zone was Wayne Milner, who would be drafted in the 8th round of the 1936 NFL Draft. But again, our story is on the number 3 overall pick, a young man who in the very next week would face Northwestern in a titanic battle of gentlemen with literary names, as Northwestern's great end was Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, but not the writer, the football player. The season would end, and Notre Dame would lose this young man who was a consensus All-American, who was then picked number 3 overall in the first ever NFL draft. But he never played football. He actually ended up going to work in business, working for the Cincinnati Rubber Company for most of his life, becoming vice president and president, spending his entire life, aside from a stint in the U.S. Army, of course, where he won Bronze Star and several combat infantry medal badges for the Battle of the Bulge. This gentleman's name, as I mentioned, was a bit of a literary character's name, and he was known by several nicknames, including the Bard of South Bend and the Bard of Staten Island, where he was born from. This young man's name was William Bill Shakespeare. But the part of the story I haven't told you is that he was the 3rd overall pick in 1936 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were at the time known by the name the Pittsburgh Pirates. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Sports Agents of Chaos 2023 Pick Challenge will have a new 4th member. See, Sandoval has taken the year off to go and, I guess, find himself in a way. And so we needed to find a replacement. Well, we have. With near universal acclaim already met by everyone, of course near because Justin will probably not like this guy anymore, may I present to you our 4th cast member for this season, Shakespeare the Pirate. Oh, it's going to be a fun one, boys. It's going to be quite fun indeed.
Oh, man. That's why he's... Oh, my goodness. Oh, what a buildup. The whole time I'm like, what is he leading to?
I was lost. Yeah.
First off, when he said the first overall pick from the draft, he was like, he was like, everyone knows this guy. I'm like, Rick, I have no idea who the hell that is. Like, I wish we had like a Twitter. We could do a Twitter poll. Are you allowed to say everyone knows who the very well known so and so if no one knows who the hell he is?
I don't know. Does this mean he's going to pick Pittsburgh to win his divisions?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, we know he loves Mike Tomlin.
Maybe he's going to go on Pittsburgh's. He's going to join the Pittsburgh train like he joined the Washington train last year. Listen, I don't know if Pittsburgh's going to win or lose. I haven't even looked into it yet. All I'm saying is,
same.
Rick, come on, man.
I love it. I welcome our new cast member with. I welcome our new cast member with open arms, and I can't wait to say the very least for him to be a part of the show. If we had fun with Sandoval, I think we're gonna have fun with old Billy Shakes the Pirate, to say the very least.
Billy Shakes. All right.
Billy Shakes.
I guess that's what we're doing again.
I mean, Justin, you got to prepare yourself. The question is, are you ready for that mascot to do better than us 1 week during the season with the pick challenge? No. Hopefully, neither am I. Imagine he's better than picking than Sandoval. That might actually be a problem. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Obviously, a lot of pre-draft stuff. We mentioned a lot of rumors in the show. Talk Jalen Hurts, talk Trey Lance, talk the 2025 year options, and of course, sprinkled a lot of conversation in there, to say the very least. Thank you all so much for joining us on this week's episode of the show. Check back in next week, where it'll be fun. It'll be, well, at least post the first 3 rounds of the draft, more likely than not, and reacting. Well, we're not going to react to day 3 picks necessarily, but we're going to give immediate reactions to the picks that were made. What's going to happen next week? Who are the Panthers going to select with quarterback? Who are the Texans going to go for the number 2 overall pick? Who's going to trade up in this class? Who's going to trade down? Who are the unexpected picks going to happen? What are teams with multiple first-round picks going to do? And just overall, who's going to rise? Who's going to fall? Who's going to make out of this draft doing well, and who's not going to do so? We are here to review it all on next week's episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, where the motto of the show is we have fun, we talk football, and we cause just a little bit of chaos now with a pirate involved. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.